So I'm Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series, CPS the Horror Stories. I'm not an attorney or a social worker, but I am a mother who had her children kidnapped a few years ago by CPS. After 2 years of fighting, I did get my kids back, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the struggles dealing with the traumatic events, devastation, and corruption that Child Protective Services really is. I now have this platform to allow parents and family members to be able to discuss the truth and reality of what CPS does and how they're little about protecting children anymore, but instead they're about the dollar sign that's above our children's heads. So would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Lisa, and
Where are you from?
upstate New York.
Okay. And what do you do?
I worked as a senior clerk for Keeley County, for 14 years. I was a senior clerk or a clerk in a health office, and then I was a flagger for New York State Electric and Gas for 3 years, and then I was injured almost 2 years ago in November.
Wow. Now, how many children do you have?
I have 3 children.
What are their ages?
28, 29, and 11.
Okay.
I have 2 sons.
Go ahead.
2 sons from my first marriage, and my daughter from this recent marriage.
And I take it that we're going to be talking about the 11-year-old.
Yes.
Okay. Now, were you involved with CPS when you were a child?
I was put up for adoption, so I was in foster care for a short period of time before I was adopted. I don't know if that.
Yeah. Why were you adopted, if you don't mind me asking?
My biological mother gave me up for adoption during birth, basically, to Catholic Charities, and I was put in foster care, but then adopted within 3 weeks.
Wow. Now, how was your life in the system? Whether it was with a foster family or adoptive family, how was your life and your experience?
It was hard. I was the second adopted of 3 into a family where they had just lost their second adopted daughter due to the biological mother wanting her back. So then I was given to them as a replacement. Yeah.
I don't like that word.
Yeah, but I was the truth.
I'm very sorry. Nobody should be ever called a replacement.
Yeah. And I had colic, so they already wanted the other child, didn't want the other child to leave. And so they were throwing me.
And now you come in as a problem child?
Yes.
Wow, Lisa. Can I just pause you and give you some affirmations?
Yeah.
Because Lisa, I don't know what your beliefs are. But I believe in God, and I know that you specifically were created for a reason, and you were created perfectly, and you were wanted, and you were thought about way before your parents even met or knew each other. And God knows from the second you were created to the second you will pass how many hairs every day you have on your head. How many tears have fallen from your eyes? Like, you are seen, you are known, and you are known intimately with God, and you're loved. So there is no, second best or replacement. You're not a replacement to him. You are you specifically. And like I said, you were chosen and loved so much, and you're beautiful. So
I
all
was
the
born to be a mother.
all these other words that you've been temporarily given, they're gone.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. Wow. That's just in a couple minutes. So you come in and you take this other child's place and you have colics. So you're having a rough start. And then what happens?
I was always the problem child, even though I caused no problems, none. I'm very, I'm very nice, and I'm very, I never caused any problems, but I was always blamed for everything.
Mm.
And
Like what?
I got most of the punishment.
Like what, if you don't mind me asking, what was the blame and what was the punishment? And you choose the word punishment.
Anything I did or said was wrong. You know, where did you come from? Why do you think like that? If I said someone was nice, I mean, anything I said, if I say, oh, she's so nice, they'd say, oh, you don't know what a nice person is. You were wrong about that kind of stuff, and that I wouldn't be my sister's best friend. So I was horrible for that. And they took out their aggression.
It sounds like you have a sweet heart, so
I do.
and it got blamed for it.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope it hasn't changed. I mean, I hope they didn't.
No, it's in there.
Good.
Yeah. My children know.
Great.
Yeah.
What was the punishment? Because you chose punishment instead of discipline. So what was the punishment that you got?
I was always told I wasn't, I was never right. I was always wrong. I was hit. I was all kinds of hitting and slapping and pinching, grounded all the time, and everything. I mean, everything. Physical.
Was there ever any sexual abuse?
No, not in my family.
That's good.
Yeah.
So who was the main physical abuse person? Mom or dad?
Mom.
I'm familiar with that.
And she could lead my father into making it worse for me every so often, but she would really have to, tell him to.
Can you repeat what you said? I apologize.
Your
dad could, you said your mom, something about your mom and your dad.
Oh, she has a way of controlling him, and so she could get it was very common for her to get him engaged in hitting me, or whatever she wanted to, make me pay for not being my sister's best friend, or whatever stupid thing I was in trouble for.
Understood. Okay, as you were saying,
Yeah, I was always the target of blame for everything. And then really anything I said was wrong, or anything I thought to say or do was wrong in some way. I was always put down, I guess you would call it. You know, why are you so nice to everyone? Why are you nice to her? You don't know her. You don't. Just anything I ever thought was wrong.
Sounds so familiar.
Yeah. I was little, she would always say, I don't know where you came from, or I like you, but I'll never love you. Just little things like that all the time. All the time. Every day. Yeah.
What people don't realize is those comments, they stick with us. They hurt.
It hurts, yeah. Yeah.
So, did you stay with that family until you were 18?
Till I was 18.
Do you still talk with them?
Since this has all been going on, they're embarrassed by it. They don't want their well-to-do friends, that's all they're friends with, in this little town, to ask them questions and talk about it. So they've asked me at least about 2.5 years ago to that they were removing me from the family, and that I wasn't to come near any of their homes, and so that their friends would stop asking them questions, and that I should just let them win, and so it would go away for them. And it doesn't matter to them about my daughter or the abuse that I of me.
What state are you in?
New York.
Right.
Farm country. Yep.
So let's talk about how and why CPS showed up in your life in the first place.
When I after I got divorced, or after he left the house, basically, and the very next day I went to file custody, but he beat me to it, and he filed first, so it became his case. Or I wanted to file for a divorce in custody, that was it, and they said that I couldn't because he had already gotten to the courthouse and filed for sole custody immediately. That's all he filed for. And so I didn't have income at the time. I wasn't working when I was married, so I went to the place in this county where they help indigent people. You can go there if you're, and they helped me to, get food stamps, and they took a statement from me, and I petitioned the court and the very judge that continues to be the judge this whole entire time for order of protection, which I received. And it included my daughter's name, because in my statement that I wrote and that I told them, my daughter was she witnessed all the abuse plus her own, plus she was made to watch him rape me and beat me and choke me unconscious and strangle me. So they put her name on the restraining order also.
This is your husband?
Yes.
How many years?
We were married for 4 years. He was, married for 4 years before he left the house that one night. He never lived in the home because he owns another home on a lake, very expensive piece of property on a lake. So he continued to live there because the abuse was so bad. I was only raped by him. Our marriage was not consummated. It was only raped from the wedding night.
How long were you guys together? Is he the father of the daughter?
Yes. She was conceived through rape. So, what was your?
It doesn't sound like the marriage was wanted by you. Was it forced or?
It was. It's so hard to go there, but you know, I met him at the end of summer 6, and we were engaged by Thanksgiving, and then married, and then all the abuse, and then subsequently I did not want to. I knew it would be extremely dangerous for me to have another child. I was 42 when I got pregnant, and so I had this child at 43. So all very quickly within a year's time. And basically how it began was he told me that he was a millionaire, and everyone in his family I knew to be millionaires. That his father owns a big company, all of his aunts and uncles own companies. He told me he was president of his father's company. That was a lie. He's not even allowed inside that company. But his father put $700 or $800 in his bank account every week, so that when he does his taxes, they claim he works for the company, but he's so dangerous that they don't even allow him in the building during the workday. So he does, like, they call it errands for his father, like clean a garage out or go groceries, or just because he's the other son.
None of this you knew.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, that whole summer, fall courting was, I thought it was Princess Diana. He has a company credit card. I didn't understand that he can buy anything he wants with that. So, like, I didn't even have to put in gas in my car. He bought everything. I didn't have to pay for anything. And he told me that he would make me a millionaire, and that he would make my sons millionaires, because he knew that I had just spent 13 years alone raising my sons, and I had a county job, and so I worked really hard and had my own home and mortgage, and put a pool in for my sons, and went on vacations. And I told him I didn't want anything to change for my boys. That I took them on vacation every spring break, and Disney World twice, and he said, "Oh, they'll go on more vacations than that. I'll make you all millionaires." And so I just believed that one little lie, and just thought, oh, relief, relief from my children. My boys were everything to me. And then it stopped the day I married him. He raped me that night and left me in the room that I paid for one night. I began paying for everything that night. Everything. He never bought a diaper, food.
On your wedding night, or the night your daughter was born? Okay.
On my wedding night. He left me to go to the bar to look for other women. Yeah.
I know this story. It sounds so familiar.
Really?
It was mine. My wedding night, everything changed.
Yeah.
The person I married was not the person I had been dating.
No, exactly.
I apologize. This is my daughter.
Hi. You look just like your mom. You're beautiful.
Thank you. the reason that I ask or make sure that I mention how my own personal story as well is because I know people will comment and have a lot to say, like, why would you marry somebody like that, or blah blah blah.
Yeah. Yep. Every day.
First of all, when you have a heart like ours and we see the good in people,
Yep.
we truly choose to see the good in people.
Yeah.
And when somebody, anybody such as our husbands, give us that little bit of sneak peek of positive and hope, we cling to that hope and we will do anything we can. We will suffer and struggle to help them be the man we know they can be.
Yep.
But what ends up happening is they tear us apart in the meantime, and it kills us. Literally, it kills us.
Yeah. My health is failing, and I had a heart attack last October. Just one thing after another with my health.
Yes. One moment again. Okay. And we're back. So, this started right away. So from your wedding night, when did you get pregnant, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, she was born the following December, so March.
You got married in December?
In September.
September, okay. So
of the year before. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, and I had preeclampsia, I had high blood pressure. They couldn't control it. Still to this day, it has stayed. My thyroid died. My had anemia, preeclampsia right up to the C-section, which during the C-section, the spinal failed. So that felt like an autopsy. It was unbelievable. I felt every finger, every hand, every layer. And they couldn't redo it. So, and I had blood pressure out of control. And I'm lucky I lived through that. And then he took the baby right away and didn't let me hold it. And I couldn't speak. I think I was kind of in shock from not having any spinal during the C-section. I remember I couldn't speak, but a nurse brought in a hand pump for morphine if I wanted to use that for pain, but I wasn't in any pain. And he when they left, he took that from out of my hand, grabbed it, and proceeded to put all of the morphine into my body. And
how?
He pumped it into me, all of it.
But isn't the pump set to where you can only do it every so many minutes or whatever?
He had a conversation with the nurse when she brought it in, and he basically, the biggest reason why he said he stayed at his home and never moved in here was he told her, the nurse, that he was had experience nursing, that he did home dialysis for his mother for years. That's what he was still doing during that time and up until 2010 in his home 5 nights a week. So basically he had to be there every day for one reason or another. And so he took control of that pump. And the next thing I knew, I was watching, I would look over and see him with the pump and holding the baby and laughing at me. And he had his fingers where he was trying to show me that they were in the baby and laughing at me, because he told me he would do this the whole when we went to see the doctor and found out that it was a girl. He had already told me from the moment we got married that he was attracted to little girls, babies too. and had done this his whole life, and that he planned on having sex with and sexualizing our daughter. When we found out it was a girl, he stopped me on the way from the door to the car and got in front of me and was hitting me in the face with his finger and saying, can I have sex with our daughter when she's born? And I said, that was like the craziest thing I ever heard. And I said, over my dead body. And, I just thought, I just was like in shock. And then, but he continued to hit my face with his finger, which I have broken capillaries all over my cheeks from it. That's one of his biggest things he does is hit you with he's got really big, strong arms and hands. And he just said, I'm going to have sex with her and there's nothing you could do about it because of who I am and who I'm connected to and what I've learned. He's a police officer, a sheriff deputy here. So he said he knew how to get away with it, and he was covered by every organization he could be covered by. He told me that I could never tell on him because he would take my entire life away because he knew all the right people and they would cover for him, and they are covering for him. He was absolutely right.
Wow.
So the nurses came rushing in and the delivery night, and when it was all in me, almost the whole bag, and they were screaming at him to stop. If they said that if you put one more drop into her body, all of her organs are going to shut down and she's going to die. Then they whisked me off, and I don't remember much except when I came to.
They didn't take the baby from him?
No. I don't know if he told them. I don't know what he said to them, but at that point, they were just trying to save my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he was just laughing the whole time.
Now, did you tell anybody what he was doing to your daughter?
I didn't. I cannot describe how frozen in fear I was. I didn't know what to do. I don't know. He didn't stay in the hospital. He didn't come to the hospital. I wanted to leave because I had paid for and ordered the special room, but it was really filthy. The floor was black, like my socks would be black. Just walking around, the bathroom was really dirty, and
What
the nurses.
special room in the hospital?
Yeah, like you can pay extra to have your own suite. It's like called a suite.
Okay.
To recover in, but it was filthy, and because I was in the suite, which was a longer way for the nurses to walk, I don't know why, but they were not nice to me at all. And I don't know if it's something he said, because I'm learning things now that he says to people like, she's not nice, don't be nice. I don't know what he says about me, but nothing that comes out of his mouth is the truth. So I remember talking to him on the phone and saying, I want to leave. I want to go to a different hospital because the nurses were really rude to me. Like I called them once so that I could go to the bathroom. And this is for instance. So she came to the door and she stood in the door and she said, what do you want? And I said, well, could you just hold? Because I never put my babies down. I hold them. Like I never put my babies down for like the whole first year of their life and beyond if I can. And I said, I just want to go to the bathroom. If you just hold her for a couple minutes. And she said, you can put the baby in the bassinet. Welcome to motherhood, and walked away. Like, didn't even know that I already raised 2 boys on my own. Like, I want my baby held. I don't know. That was just one reason I wanted to leave. And he was trying to talk me into leaving, probably knowing that they wouldn't have liked that. I would have been in trouble for going to a different hospital. I don't know. But he was like, yeah, you leave. You should leave. You should leave. Take the baby and go, which probably would have. I didn't leave, though. I stayed, and yeah.
So, when you got discharged, what happened?
I came home here. And he never moved in here. He continued to live on the lake because he was still doing home dialysis on his parent 5 nights a week. And then the other 2 days were like days that he had to prepare for those 5 nights. A lot of work involved there. So he would only come here for a few hours at a time a day to abuse me. Hopefully when my son wasn't here, the one that still lived here, who still lives with me for now. So it continued. I was, the whole time I was pregnant, the abuse never waned at all. It was the worst abuse imaginable, just raping me right up until the day I gave birth, basically, in front of our child. And I mean, just out of the blue, he would, I would bleed. He would laugh. He's an alcoholic, so he's always drunk. He drinks Manhattans all day long. Yep. So my older son, my son witnessed a lot of the physical abuse and the drinking. And then our child, after she was born, witnessed everything. During the strangulations and rapes and beatings and everything, she would, anything, if he pushed me into a wall or pushed me down the stairs, or she would be right there and she would put her hands over her ears and scream, "Stop, Dad, stop, Dad, stop, Dad." That was her first sentence. And he'd just laugh and say, "Oh, she'll never remember." I'd beg him to get her out of the room. He'd just laugh at me and say, "She'll never remember. It's funny." Yeah.
Now, you said that he was abusing her as well?
Yes, he yelled at her all the time and made fun of her as she, up until he left till she was 2.5, but she had a significant speech problem. So like when she was screaming, "Stop, Dad," it was "Hot, Dad, hot, Dad, hot, Dad." And he'd make fun of her.
What about the sexual abuse?
In front of me, from the day she came home, he would sit drinking Manhattans and have her in his arm, drunk, and I would come home from work and he would be in the same place I put her in when I left, and he would be drunk and laughing and had his fingers in her diaper and showing me and laughing at me like, "I can do this."
So my question, because I'm sure you've been asked, why did you do anything to report it? I'm sure you were afraid, but
He said if I told, I would be dead and then would not find my body parts. So I was trying to figure out from day one, obviously, how to safely, meaning live and get away.
is there anybody that you could confide in?
No, I wasn't allowed to have friends, be friends. He got in between my family and I right away. I wasn't allowed to go there without him. have a phone conversation without him. If I went to the store, he had me on the phone the entire time. Just my son that still lived here. He was here on the weekends. He went to college. He didn't know what I should, I didn't know what to do. I just lived in fear of my life. I wanted to live and be a mom. That's all I ever wanted to be.
I get it. The whole situation is hard.
Because he's an officer, so of course, he would show me his guns and threaten me with them, and
Yep.
He cut me a lot. He would drug my drinks, like my iced tea, and I would never know when. And then, so if he wasn't strangling me unconscious and raping me, then I was drinking something that I would wake up from, and might be bleeding most of the time, because he cut me with things like bottles, tools, whatever. He has what do they call him? Like, he's obsessed with feces and urine and blood, and he has this good camera and tripod, and he's always filming everything, taking pictures of everything while I'm unconscious, while I'm conscious. One time I came to and I couldn't see, and I thought I'd gone blind. I couldn't see for a while. I don't know, seemed like forever, but maybe, I don't know how long it was. And then he became clear to me, and all I could see was the whites of his eyes and the whites of his teeth. And then it came really clear, and I know he had put feces all over his skin from his forehead to his waist, his arms, and was just laughing and said that he likes it and loves it, and he does it all the time. He's done it his whole life, and among other things, and said he did it to his sisters and his mother, and always gotten away with it, and there's nothing I could do. Yeah. And who knows what he's got on film. I was never allowed to touch his computer at that house that he lived in, and but every once in a while he'd take me there, and he'd take a shower, and I'd quick look, and so I know what's on. Like, I've seen, it's just full of all kinds of porn, and it's the company computer. And at one point I called the FBI and told them what's on his computer, because I saw images of young girls being raped, and they never got back to me. I gave them all the information they would need. I know he's got backups all over that room, because he would tell me anything, because he knew. I guess it just, he would kill me if I told. He had one drawer in his one of those old steel desks that was locked, and he showed me that, and right away when he got married, and said that was full of drugs that I believe are the ones that he would put in my drinks. Drugs that he never gave his mom during the time that he took care of her. So, and he also uses those when he drinks. He knows how.
Yeah, when he told you all this stuff, did it like when did the flags start coming in and the fear and all of that?
My wedding night, but it just grew from there. Because then becoming pregnant, because then it was my wedding, and then it was Christmas, and then it seemed like all of a sudden I was pregnant, and I was so worried, because I instantly became ill, pregnant, very ill, very high blood pressure. And, they said I was very high risk. I could die very easily. They couldn't control my blood pressure. They never could. Because during pregnancy, there's only one type of blood pressure med you can take, and it didn't work for me. Nothing works for me. The one I'm on now does, but I guess I just was trying to stay alive. And I just figured that all of these things that he was doing were going to be going to make my children and I safe, like the truth is going to set us free, and I just have to be patient and not die. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. It's when you're in the situation, it's hard to know what to do, especially when you don't have any help.
Yeah. No one would, my family was like, you better stay married to him because he has money, and if you're stupid if you ever leave him. Don't you ever leave him. I mean, my parents got right in my face and pointed at me and said, don't you ever leave him.
Do your parents know what kind of man he is now?
Yes. I told them everything, but they say to me, they don't believe me. They say, you're always lying, which I don't have a reason to lie.
Yeah,
I don't lie.
Kind of crazy too.
And my child's not lying, and they think she's lying. They Patrice, the judge said, or sorry, bleh, you'll scratch that. She said, the judge says she's lying, so she's lying, and so you're lying, and we don't believe that about him, because see, he built this relationship with them apart from me, which he never let me go over there. So he would make them old-fashioned Italian dishes like that they would get as children. He knew how to, he would brown, butter them up all the time, bringing them things.
Didn't they think it was weird that you guys didn't live together? How come you didn't move in with him?
Because he lives in, I call it the dwelling. It's just a garage size building made out of cinder blocks that was on the plot of land, this huge plot of land that actually his father bought the two sons, and the two sons split the land, and the son that actually does run the company built a huge mansion on his side, and the dwelling that was already on the land, my ex just moved into. So it's only a very small quarter, it's the size of a garage, big garage.
I thought you said that his mom was living there too.
In a bedroom, he did home dialysis in a very small little bedroom in there. There's two small bedrooms, a bathroom, and you walk through the kitchen and out the door.
Okay, so he was taking care of his mom in this garage size.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
She was very, very ill, very ill. Her kidneys had shut down, so she had to have dialysis 5 nights a week. Plus was very unhealthy on the days off. There's a lot of fighting, yelling, and he had a very a bad relationship with his parents. He said he was raised by his immigrant grandparents because his parents were always into their company and whatever. So he was abused by 2 sets of grandparents that came from another country, and because he was diagnosed with a few things as a child, and he was always in fights, and so he said his parents just paid no attention to him because he was so much trouble, and that school just passed him through the system, so he reads and writes at the 3rd grade level. Yeah. I can't hear you. Oh.
What ethnicity is he?
Italian. Okay. Oh, and mother's side is Polish, so his father's side is Italian. So there were 2 sets of grandparents that came over and took care of the kids, which he's the oldest, and he's really deviant, very to the extreme.
Right.
He said he abused his family members that were young girls, and just got away with it his whole life. There's one girl that he had as a girlfriend, and when she left, I'm still trying to find her. She's hiding. She does not want to be found. So I don't know what her story is, but basically he told me that that his parents, because of the money they have, pay our county thousands and thousands of dollars a year since he was 18 to put him on the special officer list so he could be a deputy sheriff, fill in, but still he has the he works as a deputy, and every year, because their family just pays the county off in so many ways. He said that I'll never be believed. He'll always be covered. He told me that they covered a crime. He told me that as a sheriff in his hometown, which is just another town in our county, for 17 years, he told me that he pulled over girls that were driving alone and would rape them in the back seat if they didn't want a ticket. And then one day in 2004, a man brought his wife in and said that my wife just admitted that this officer raped her on beat and resulted in the birth of our son, which I believed to be mine all these years, because she was too afraid she was threatened not to tell on him. And he said, I'm going to take him I want him arrested. I'm going to take him to court. I want to DNA my son, DNA him, to prove that he raped my wife on duty. And he told me that they called him into the office that day and said, listen, these people have an ironclad case against you, so we have to fire you, or because of who your father is, you can resign and we'll cover it all up. And we'll say that you were carrying the wrong numbered gun is why you resigned. And so he took that. He resigned in 2004. And within 1 week, that mother and father were killed. They were dead. The mother, I don't know how she was threatened, but she tried to slit her wrists. It didn't work. And then she drove her truck into a wall and died. And then the father, who was a known drug dealer around that county, or that little town, they followed him to a drug drop-off. He was in the back seat with the son, who is the product of my ex's rape, and another son, because I guess he had children from a lot of girls. And he was in the back seat while the driver went in, did whatever they did. Someone walked right up to the car and simply shot both of the adults in the car in front of those two kids.
Was this when you were already married to him, or this was prior?
2 years before I met him.
So he was not an officer anymore.
Right, from 2004 till I met him. And then he told his father to ask again. So he told me that his father paid them tons of money. They put him back on the force and put him just on the other end of the county in another little town. So in which he still is working. And I know, because anytime I was ever in a car with him, he is always looking at any girl from birth to any age. Yep. To pick up and bring home and do what he wants to do to them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry. Just give me a minute to take a breath.
I know.
Okay. So, how did CPS get involved in your life?
Well, I had the restraining order with both of our names on it. And of course, they gave us a court date for a week later.
For the restraining order, you said?
Yes.
Let's talk about that, how that came up again.
Okay. Well, they called, or what do you call it? Summoned me to court, summoned me to a hearing.
Who did?
The judge, a different judge.
But from who? Like, let's.
From me filing the restraining order.
Okay, so you filed a restraining order against your husband.
Yes.
For you and your daughter, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we went to that. So then immediately.
I apologize for interrupting you,
Okay.
but what was the reason that you used?
Okay. That he hit, raped, strangled me unconscious, threw me downstairs, threw me into walls, spit in my face, smothered me. When I wouldn't answer him, he would sit on top of me and try to smother me all the time. And all in front of my child. So I didn't go in there knowing that a child could be on a restraining order. I didn't know that at all. She's told me that both of our names would be on there because of what she witnessed. So,
that doesn't mean that it would be against you, right?
Right. What do you mean? Wait, what?
Who told you both of your names would be on there?
Oh, the girl at this help center.
Oh, okay.
You can go when you don't have money.
Okay.
So she gives it to the judge. The judge says yes or no. So he approved it with both of our names. And then obviously he must have been served it or made known of it. And then he went MIA for 6 days. Until this hearing, which came right up the next week. And at the hearing, it was the only other judge in town that they had scheduled us with, and he happens to be first cousins with my ex's lawyer. So in the courtroom, he said it's against the law for him to make any rulings because he's first cousins with the other lawyer, my ex's lawyer. And then he said, but I will make one ruling. So he shouldn't have, but he did. He said, and I think they planned the whole hearing for this. He said, I'm going to take the child's name off the restraining order so that liberal visitation can begin. And just like that, she had to begin visitation at 3.
Did you tell the judge what he was doing to her? Was that information on there? Or?
That was all in the report that got me the restraining order. Yeah, I was in shock. Just shocked. So he got a lot of visitation right then and there, like every other weekend, plus 2 nights during every week, overnights, plus, all the holidays, all that, everything right then and there. No investigation. I had told the girl at that place that I wanted to officially report these crimes that were done to me with the police, and she told me that she would take care of that and that someone would be in contact with me, and no one was ever in contact with me. I just was thrown into these hearings, the trials, and her visitation started, and in the minute it started, every single time she came home was trauma. I have the kind of house that you can run around it. Like, there's room to run around the center of the house. The stairs are in the center, so you can run through the rooms and run. And she would, at 3, she would just immediately run around the rooms holding her privates and screaming, "Ow, my tutu, ow, my tutu, ow, my tutu."
Which would refer to as what?
Her private parts, her front private parts. She was holding them and screaming, crying for hours. And then she would get tired, and then she would still be screaming and crying, sitting down on her princess couch. Same thing. I tell you, and she would make a motion of him, of what he would, that he'd do this, he'd do this, and she would hit herself there. And she wasn't lying. I mean, I knew she wasn't lying, but and then it just
Did you ever take her to the hospital?
No, I took her to the doctor because I don't know, someone gave me advice or whatever. They said, if you go through your doctor first, and when I did take her to the doctor, she did tell her pediatrician that she told him that she said my daddy does this to me, and so he must have been the first call, because that's about when the CPS reports began.
Who must have been the first call?
Her pediatrician, I'm thinking.
First call from who?
Maybe him, maybe the pediatrician. I don't.
No, I'm confused at what you're saying.
Oh, like the first time CPS was called.
Oh, I see. Okay, so when you took her to the pediatrician, she told him what happened.
Yes.
What was his response?
He stepped out of the room and told me that he said, "I don't like to get involved in these kinds of things. It's not what I'm used to doing." He said, "But he said, you're going to have to find help on your own. It's not something I'm going to treat her for." And basically why I took her there also was from the minute visitation began, she stopped having bowel movements at visitation at his home. So she was suffering from capricia, and I took her. So he referred me to a gastroenterologist for children, and she did in fact have a black colon from the time that she began visitations, because she was holding it in. And so I think at least 3, maybe 4 times this happened, where I had to take her back, find the blockage, treat her with the medication. She had to stay with me for 10 days, and then go back to this other place where they make sure she's all right down there and interview her. So I don't know if some calls came out of there. I never have ever been told who made the calls. All I've been told is every single time I've been in a hearing for custody, which this is now the third custody case for her, because of course the first one was his, and he won that one by coming to the trial and meeting behind closed doors with the other judge that he had in his pocket, his father's pocket. And they came out and said, he has pictures of you and it's going to prove that you were party to his abuse. So you can end this trial right now, and those pictures he'll have to destroy them. Yeah, right. Or you can go through the trial and those pictures are going to be all over the world. So that's what I was told by the lawyer. So I feel like I was forced to end that trial. And then, so that was a year after he left. And then I immediately filed for divorce. And they didn't give us a court date for that for a year later. So all in that year, I had to go through all of her trauma of every visitation. Every time she came home, she was sore, and we had to argue and barter whether or not she could take a bath, get a sponge bath, or not have a bath because it hurt too much. And she screamed when she went to the bathroom, and she screamed. It was just trauma here. I didn't know what to do and keep her safe at the same time. Because of what he said, like that he would have me killed and my family, and my children if I told on him. And then she told her brother one night he was in his room cleaning his room with his girlfriend who was in there too. And she was going up the stairs in front of me, and she loves her brother, very close to her brother. They have a beautiful sibling relationship. He's very loving and she's very loving. And she went into his room, and I was about 10, 15 feet behind her, and I heard her start to tell him. She said, I tell you, I heard my son say, what? And then she said, and then I appeared into the hallway, and she looked at me and she looked at him, and she said to her brother, I tell you, Daddy does this to me. And she again hit herself down there. And he wrote it. I told him, write it down on a piece of paper, write down every single word she said to you.
How old was he, and what's the age difference? What were the ages?
So she was 3 or 4, and he was, let's see, he's 28 right now. She's 11, so 17 years difference. So he was 18 or 19, I guess, and in college.
So she tells him.
Mm-hmm.
And what was his reaction? What were her words? And then
she said, I tell you, Daddy does this to me. He rubs my tutu too hard, and it hurts. Can't remember much more. But then, because when she blurts that out, she always runs away, scared and crying. And then I was comforting her, just saying, I understand. I'm trying to help. I'm trying my best. I will always be trying to help you. and all of us.
Wasn't his mom present?
No, she's very sick, very ill with she could barely move, the one he was doing home dialysis on. She was not well at all.
My camera is going to go off for a moment, but I'm here listening.
Okay.
So go on.
So she had the black colons, and then she had a full rectal prolapse coming home from a visitation with him. I was making deviled eggs, and so I was at the sink, and she said she was going to the bathroom, and she immediately started screaming at the top of her lungs. And I ran in there and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, I can't, it hurts. It hurts too much. I said, "Did you wipe?" And she said, "I can't, it hurts too much." And I said, "Well, we have to wipe." And she locked her legs and said, "No, you can't, it hurts too much. I can't." And she was screaming, like she's not like I'm talking, like it was blood curdling screams. And so I got the toilet paper and I kept talking to her calmly. And I explained to her that I needed to wipe her, that, or else it would hurt more. I knew that for a fact. That if she went to, I made sure, "Did you urinate?" "Yes, I did." "Okay, well then, if you did, we have to at least pat it dry, if you're going to feel any better." And she wouldn't unlock her legs. So then I had to get closer to her, and I was trying to pry her knees apart and to wipe, because I was desperate for her. She was screaming, sweating. I was sweating, and I was just telling her, "I'm just going to pat it dry, and I'll carry you, and we'll sit." She always had her, she was always in my arms in this chair, and she was just screaming and screaming. And I finally got her legs unlocked, and she was red from front to back, rubbed raw, and I saw something, and I didn't know what it was. And I got her bent her forward and looked, and it was, I thought I knew what it was, but then he told me that's exactly what it was. So I had to put all of her intestines were hanging out of her body because she had pushed so hard. That was a total rectal prolapse. And I had her intestines in one hand, and I was holding her.
This is at your home?
Yes, right after a visitation, right after her coming home from a visitation with him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was alone, and I called for advice. First, I called her doctor, the pediatrician, and I said, "I don't know what is going on, but I'm holding something in my hand, and it came out of her body." And he said, "Oh, that's her intestines. Is very serious. He said, "I'm ordering you to go to the ER at this state hospital." And I said, "Okay." So I called my father, who came and took us. And when we got there, she was in very serious condition. Her entire intestines were in my hand, and the doctor took her from me and took her into surgery. And when she came out, he told me that I was very lucky that he was able to get all of her intestines back into her body successfully. But she was in very grave danger. If he wasn't able to get them back in, she would have been disabled for life. She would have been not had an intestine. And at that point, at that moment, at that time, she disclosed to the doctors what her father does to her at night, and to social workers who also interviewed me. And of course, I reported everything I knew. So that probably was another call. And maybe the blocked colons were, I don't know. But then, when she was, she was due to be at his house for an overnight the next day. And she didn't want to go. Oh, by the way, she never wanted to go to visitation. She would scream and fight me every single time. She would kick off her shoes. She would go backwards up the stairs screaming. She would hide. She would, if I put a hat and coat and gloves, she'd take them off. She'd take off her socks and run. And I always had to bring her to the car screaming without her coat on and anything. To get her in the car. And she just cried all the way to drop off every single time. So that day we didn't get out of the ER until 5:30 in the morning. And he had his buddy is he's a sergeant or lieutenant, he's higher up in the sheriff department. And he called me on the phone when I was in the car with my poor baby, so upset and crying, hadn't slept. But here I was trying to get her there because I knew they would do something to me if I didn't have her there at the exchange on time. And he called and he said, he yelled at me.
Hold on 1 second. What I don't understand is at the hospital having that surgery, how long was she in the hospital for?
Like overnight.
From that major surgery? Just one night?
Yeah. Because he was able to put it in himself, he said.
What do you mean?
Put her intestines back into her body.
Okay, but then CPS, did they come to the hospital?
No. I mean, there was someone there from CPS who interviewed both my child and I. And I have the records, and they say that, she told doctors and nurses of her sexual abuse.
But they didn't remove her or say she does. I don't understand.
I know. That's what I mean. They just kept me going into this. They just kept me, like, nothing stopped. Even though she went through all those blockages. Then the blocked colon or the rectal prolapse, and then nothing happened. Or maybe they came to the house later, like another day. I don't know. Every time they've been here, they've only been here 3-4 times, maybe max. They've come in and they've said, and see, I always assumed that they were here to help my child and I, but that's never happened. They would come in, they'd say, we've received a report from CPS. CPS has received a report to investigate. So we're just visiting. We're going to visit the father's home, and we're visiting here. And the only thing they did was they said, we only want to see that there's food in your refrigerator, and does she have a bedroom? And then they left, and the very next day, the case would be closed because of his connections, I believe. And that happened every single time. And by that, I mean, not only did she have the rectal prolapse, which is very serious, could have been life-threatening to her, but she 2 times after that, in September and then again in October. So September of, I believe it was 214, September of 214, she came home from visitation and she was screaming, nonstop, crying that her tutu hurt. And when I looked, she was
When
rubbed
was this?
September and October of 214. When I was
September and October of
2014, I believe.
Okay, you said 214. I'm like, what?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so she was just rubbed raw, and I called my brother because, see, when she had the rectal prolapse, I was starting to tell you that, and I was bringing her to her visitation day the next day. He was threatening me on the phone, his friend who's higher up in the sheriff's department. He was threatening to arrest me if I didn't get there on time. And he said it over and over. I'm going to arrest you if you're not here on time. What do you think you're doing? You don't have the right to be late. So I said, I'm on my way. We were in the hospital overnight. I said, I have to get a prescription. I said, what do you want me to do? Not get it and let him get it? Or, like, I was scared. Like, he was saying, I'm going to arrest you if you're 1 minute late. So
was he aware that she had been in the hospital?
Yes, he was saying that I didn't have a right. What he was yelling at me, I had no right to bring her to a hospital without the father's approval. And of course, I did all the things I was supposed to do, meaning once I got there, I texted him that night before and said, she's in the hospital. She has a full rectal prolapse.
Now, when you went to the hospital and the doctor did the surgery and stuff, did he say what it was caused from?
Yes, he told me it could be a sign of sexual abuse, and that the child had told the doctors and other people, I forget who, it's in the records, that was what she said that was happening to her, that she was being rubbed too hard down there.
Okay.
And she told me in between the incidents that like one day we were in the driveway and I was edging and she was riding her tricycle and she stopped it and she said, Mommy, you know how girls and boys are different down there? And I said, yeah. And I said, why? And she said, well, you know how boys have, it's like a hot dog and it gets really big? And I said, how do you know that? And she said, oh, because I have to look at dads all the time. And then she did her usual. She runs off screaming and crying and cowering, and she just feels awful about, she's scared. She's always scared dad's going to be mad at her. She would say, if I tell you, he's going to ground me and then he won't let me eat. And I said, what do you mean ground you? You're 3 years old. I would say that, or you're 4 years old. And she said it then. And she said, I have to sit on my bed and I can't watch TV and I can't play with anything. And then I can't eat and I can't drink milk if I tell on him at all. I said, And then one time she said, and sometimes he goes inside. And I just looked at her and I said, what do you mean he goes inside? I said, and she just froze. She looked so scared. And I said, tell me, what do you mean he goes inside? Inside what? Inside where? And she said, in my butt. And she gets this look on her face like, are you going to help me? I'm scared. Now I'm in trouble with dad. It's this kind of look that I've come to recognize with her. She just looks like, oh my God, what did I say? Oh my God, I'm in trouble now. And I just, I just tell her, I understand what you're telling me. I know you're telling me the truth. Always know that I believe you, and just always know that I'm trying to help you. And so when I got to the police station that day, because that's where, of course, he always got to pick where our pickup and drop offs were. And so where were they? At where he works, where the sheriff's department. So they would play this game where he's supposed to, like, the exchange is supposed to be in the parking lot, but he'd be inside, cracking jokes and ignoring me and ignoring the child and making me wait, torture, just making me think I might be in trouble. So when I got there that day, I carried her in. She wouldn't let go of my neck. She never let go of my neck until she was kidnapped. But so I was bringing her in. She was holding me tight, saying, I'm not going, I'm not going. And he came over and grabbed her from me forcibly. And his buddy, the sergeant, pointed at me. He's about 10 feet away from me in a door, and he motioned me to follow him, like with his thumb. And I didn't know what he was doing. I was in the hospital all night. So, and he knew, they both knew. So he called me into a soundproof room, and there was a little lady in there, a little older than me, very tiny. I didn't know what she was CPS, but she was CPS. I had no idea. They did not tell me. I sat down at the table, and he proceeded to scream and yell at me like an army sergeant for about 45 minutes. In my face, spitting in my face, pointing in my eyes, throwing his chair around into the wall, slamming his book down, slamming his hands down on the table in front of me, yelling in my face, tell the truth. Why did you really go to the hospital? You're trying to frame your husband because of this custody trial. Tell me that. Tell me that's the truth. And I just kept calmly, like I talk, just kept telling him, no, that's not true. She had a full rectal prolapse, and then at one point I turned to him because he would not stop screaming at me, and the lady wasn't doing anything, and I was just sitting there calmly, and I just turned to him and I said, do you know what a rectal prolapse is? And he said, no, I don't. What is it? And then I told him what it was, and he said, oh, I didn't know that's what that was. And so then he left the room, after slamming the chair against the wall again. As he was walking out, he said, if 1/4 of the things you've told me about, he said his name, is true, then he's a very sick individual. And
now,
then
who is this that's questioning you?
his friend, his coworker, a sergeant, though. He's just a foot deputy car patrolman. So this was a sergeant, actually, of sexual abuse. So he left the room slamming the door. And
so you basically open a can of worms. You tell him the truth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, and that's not the first time I had told him the truth. I forgot. There's more. Oh, my gosh. When visitation first began, it began in January of 2013. 2012. Began in January of 2012. In February of 2012, this is after she's Black, she's holding. Every visitation is a horror show. The pickup spot he had chosen then was his other friend, another deputy's house. where they treated me horribly. Like I would get there to pick her up and they wouldn't have her the least bit ready. Just make me wait, just the torture of it all, and laughing. And so one day I go to pick her up, and it's the end of February, a Sunday evening, the last Sunday of February 2012, and I wait, and no one comes out. 20 minutes later, his friend comes out of his home, comes up to my car, because they had asked me to wait in the car after a while. They didn't want me coming to their door. They just treated me horrible. And he said, did so-and-so, did he call and let you know what's going on? And I said, no, what's going on? And he said, oh, well, he texted me and he said that Nina scratched her arm and he just wanted to make sure everything was okay. So he was just going to run her up to the ER for a second. And he said, nothing to worry about. It's just a scratch and that you can just wait here for him.
Who's he? Because sorry.
My ex.
Okay, so the ex.
His friend was telling me. His friend was it was at his friend's house, another sheriff that was the pickup at the time. Because he would change the pickup to different police stations just to torture me. Like the pickup should have been in a driveway like any normal person. But no, he had to have him where he had friends he could make me wait, torture the child, and it was horrible.
So the friend said
just wait here, he'll be right back. It's nothing but a scratch on her arm.
Okay.
So I immediately went to the hospital because I just knew. My mom knows. And I walked in, there was no one in the waiting room, and I could hear him. He was drunk. He was already you can go inside the doors, and that's where you talk with the person who admits you into the ER kind of thing. He was at the desk, but on the other side of the door. And he was doing what he does when he's drunk, which he's drunk all the time. He's very gregarious, very talks with his hands, and very flirtatious. And he had the attention of 4 women. And they were laughing. Everyone was laughing. He was so drunk. And I'm looking for my daughter was behind him, walking in circles, crying, like sobbing. And so I banged on the window. It's like a glass window to get their attention, loud enough to get their attention. And they all froze, the women, and they all looked at me. And he froze, and he just put his head down, completely down, shut his mouth.
Who were the women?
They worked at the hospital ER. So they were admitting
nurses.
Secretaries. Yeah, or nurses, yeah. And they said, can we help you? What do you want? And I said, I'm her mother, the little girl who's walking in circles and crying right there. I'm her mother. And they looked up at him, and he shook his head, yes. And they said, okay, you can come in. So I come in, and my daughter sees me, and she just breaks down, Mommy! And she jumps in my arms, and she's sobbing even louder. And he is so drunk. He continues. Now, I still have the restraining order on for myself. He's not supposed to be near me. It's already into my time. But he was so drunk, he just didn't think of it.
Right.
He stayed right next to me as they walked us down the hall to a bed in the hallway. And he took a stool that someone would step on, and he sat down on that, way down on the ground. And I sat up on the bed with, of course, of course, she had her arms around me, and she was crying. And he wouldn't lift his head and wouldn't talk. But I could smell it anyways. I could smell the whiskey. And it was bothering me. But I wanted to hear what he would say. So I said,
right.
Okay. And I said, what happened? Because at that point, I still didn't know what happened. I hadn't looked at her. She was just clawing me, trying to just hang on to me and crying and screaming. And he said, well, I forgot that she was with me. and I accidentally shut the house door on her fingers. What? Now his door to the dwelling that he lives in is a sliding glass door to this garage type home that he lives in. And so he shut her fingers in that door because he forgot she was with him on the way to bring her to me. So I looked at her fingers, of course, and 2 of them were black. 2 fingernails were completely black. And he didn't move. So I turned back to him and I said, can you please, the smell is bothering me. Can you please go sit somewhere else, like maybe the waiting room until we're seen? They're going to come and do x-rays on her fingers, and can you at least go sit in the waiting room? And I said I was uncomfortable. And he got up without opening his mouth and walked away and went to the waiting room. Stumbled away. He was so drunk. So they came and got Nina and the doctor, and they took her for x-rays, and he came back and he said, and she wasn't crying when she came back, and he said, they're broken. They're just badly bruised. She may lose the nails. But as far as I'm concerned, she's good to go home. So he left, and I started to walk out, and then I noticed that my ex was gone. So I knocked on the window again. I'm holding her. She's holding on for dear life. And I said, and they said, what do you want? And I said, can I borrow your phone? I'd like to call and report something. And I was going to report that he had drove her there drunk. He had injured her fingers while drunk. There was an order in the visitation that said, he's not to drink during visitation. But I didn't tell them that. I just said, I want to report something. And they got very defensive, and they said, what did we do wrong? Are you going to report something about us girls? And I said, no, it has nothing to do with you at all. But I need to report something to the state police. And instead of the state police, because I didn't want them to call where he works, the sheriff, they called the sheriff's department. So a sheriff deputy came.
Was it because it's in like the county area?
Yeah, my home is, and his home is outside the city limits, but still in the same county. So the city police don't usually take care of. The first person to respond would be a county, unless you specifically ask for state police, which I did, but for some reason they ignored that and called the sheriff's department. They came, 2 officers. We went to a little room. Nina was, she was still wrapped around my neck and crying, whimpering softly. And he sat down and he said, what is it you're reporting? And he took out the piece of paper as if he was going to write a report. And so I started to report that my daughter was injured. My ex-husband is drunk, and he's driving, and he drove her in that state. And I wanted it reported because it's in the order that he not drink and drive while she was in his custody. And at that very moment, my daughter started doing this movement she did all the time. Every time she came home from visitation, every few minutes she would scream, ow! And she would jerk her knees up to her chest, like she was having a sharp pain. And so she started doing that on my lap. She was going, ow, ow, my tutu hurts, my tutu hurts, my tutu hurts. And she was screaming and crying. And the guy said, wait a minute. Have you ever had her checked for that at a hospital? And I said, no, not at a hospital. She has, and I explained to him, been to the doctor, been to gastroenterologist, had the, we're getting there. And then this happened, or, just it. I said, not yet. And he said, well, you can't have her seen here. And I said, why? And he said, because this hospital calls in doctors. So there's no one here right now. He said, his next question was, do you have a phone?
Can't have her seen there for what?
For what he wanted her seen for, the ow, my tutu, and her screaming and crying.
Okay.
And I told him she does that every time she comes back from visitation with him. And he said, well, she has to be seen in an ER for that. And he said, but you can't be seen here. Don't use this hospital. And I said, well, which hospital do you want me to take her to? Because I'll go right now. And, I finally thought, oh, I'm finally getting help. Of course, I'm always thinking that. And he said, wait a minute, do you have a phone? And I said, yeah. And I pulled it out like a good girl does. And he said, will you give it to me? I said, sure. I handed him my phone. He proceeded to dial a number without telling me who he was dialing. And he said, talk to this man and do whatever he says to do. Do everything he says to do. I said, okay. And I got on the phone, and it happened to be that same friend of his that went on to cause me so much more trauma. And this was my first time speaking to him. And this was right at the beginning of visitation, first month in. And he said, hello, this is so-and-so. And what are you?
Hold on, because I'm confused. So this is the doctor telling you?
No, the sheriff that came to take my report about him driving her drunk and injured to the ER.
Okay.
Instead, when he saw her, I can't think of what it's like. She just jerking. She would jerk her knees up and scream, ow, my tutu, all the time after a visitation. So he was saying that I have to have her seen immediately for that. So I said, okay, tell me where to go. And that's when he took my phone. He dialed that man. And I got on the phone, and he said, you are to meet me at the Child Advocacy Center tomorrow at 11. And I said, where's that? I didn't even know what it was. It was something new to this city anyway. So he explained it to me. He said, bring your daughter and yourself there. Be there at 11 tomorrow. I said, okay. So I went there 11 tomorrow, the next day, and he interviewed both of us.
Okay.
He interviewed my daughter first. He came out and said, she won't talk to me. And so I can't get anything from her. I don't know if that's true. I don't know anything. She was 3. She was crying. She was upset. She just, she was hurting. So then he interviewed.
You let her go in there alone?
Yes, that's the other thing. Yep. And me alone in another room next. And I took a long time, because in that moment was when I said to him, I want to officially report these things right now. And I went through everything. I told him every single detail of every single felony that he committed against me. And then, added what my child was made to.
Who watched your daughter when you were in the room?
Ladies that ran the Child Advocacy Center, I believe. Okay. Yeah, they took her with a book, and I reported everything, and I told him I wanted him, and I wanted it investigated and charged and held accountable for these felony crimes. And he said that he would do that. And he was blown away, and he said he would take care of it, and he would hear from me. He would get right back in touch with me. And
Did he know your husband personally?
oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He didn't know that I knew, because from the moment we were together, neither one of us, it was very secluded kind of relationship. Like, he told me who his friends were, but neither one of us did anything with friends. So I didn't know what he looked like until I didn't know him at all till that day in February, a month into visitation, where I reported all of the crimes to him. So to me, that's the second time, because I reported it to the Kiva, or the action agency, to get the restraining order. And they too said they would send someone to me to file the charges. Never did. So now here I was sitting with someone who I thought had to take the report, give me a copy of the report, investigate, just go forward with what I disclosed. And he promised to do that. And he never did, of course. He never did.
Sounds like this was all a setup.
It was. Yeah. Yep. Definitely a setup from day one. So I waited, and like, I'm just stupid girl. Well, they'll get in touch with me. Not thinking and not knowing anything about corruption yet. And then the rectal prolapse happened around May. And sometime else during May, I called him up on the phone, and he didn't call me back. I had to call 2 or 3 times. Then he finally called me back, and he said, "What do you want?" He was trying to set me up to maybe say things that would make me look like I was trying to blame him. That's what I got out of how he was treating me. He said, "What do you
want?"
The same guy. He is carrying right through this whole, right up till now. It'll be the same guy. He's his friend, but he's a higher rank.
Okay.
He runs, in fact, the whole division of sexual abuse for this county.
Copy.
And yet he's one of them. So, so I call it. So when he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I filed reports with you in February, and I wanted to press charges on the crimes, and you promised to get back to me, and I haven't heard from you." So I was very calm about it. I said, "I'm just wondering if you tried to get in touch with me, or I just haven't heard from you, and I want justice for these crimes." And he said, "Well," he said, "I'll set up an appointment with you. You can come in." So what I didn't know, but now I've since learned through trials, was he had me being taped when I went to his office this time. I went directly to his office, and I went in and repeated everything that I had reported, just told him my life with him from day one, from the day the abuse began. And I told him everything, and he didn't say a word. He had me on tape. I didn't know it. And it didn't matter to me, but whatever. And he sat back, and I could see him trying to think of, I could just see it in him. I just felt it, right? That's when I knew that there was something going on that wasn't right. And he said, "So why are you telling me these things? Are you trying to frame him? Are you trying to frame your ex-husband because you divorced him, and now you want custody of a kid? Is that why you're framing him? Is that what you're doing here?" He started that blaming me thing. And I kept saying, "No, not at all. No, just here to report. Make sure that I because I know that I had since learned in those few months that people were saying, well, if you reported it in February, you would have gotten a copy of the report. And I said, yeah, I never did he didn't write on one of those. He was writing on a big yellow notepad. And so I said to him, I want to make sure that it's an official report and that I get a copy of it while I'm here.
And during this time, your daughter's still having to endure visits, correct?
Yes. She's still in full visitation mode with him, and it's pure trauma going and coming back for both of us.
Right.
Her physically and me and her emotionally and her sexually, and just, and I'm trying to stay calm, but I realize now that I'm up against the whole county.
Right.
People are telling me they control the county. They're organized crime. No one tells on them. They buy what they want, and they kill people and blah. And I just kept trying to file this report. So I'm in his office, and he couldn't scare me, he was trying to blame me. He's trying to tell me I was trying to, what is that again? Frame my ex by lying about him. And I kept saying, no, everything I'm telling you is the absolute truth. And I just want to know that it's a real report. So I want a copy of it if you don't mind. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, no, I'm not going to write up this report. He said, why don't you go home? Swear to God, this is so crazy. He said, why don't you go home, write everything down that you just told me, and word for word, everything you want to report, and fax it to me to this number. He hands me a card, and he said, and then I'll look it over, and I'll see if there's anything there that I can charge him with. I'll decide. I said, okay, being, okay, stupid. And I went home and I wrote it all down and I faxed it, and I still never heard from him. Then came the rectal prolapse in May. Then came the September, October in the next year she was coming home, and every single time she would sit with her thumb in her mouth, and because I'm a mom who everyone takes a bath or a shower at night before you get into bed, kind of thing. And she just, every time she came home from a visitation, she would say, please, no bath. She'd say, how about, so then I came up with the idea of, okay, this time I could do a sponge bath, and then the next time you would have to have a bath, and maybe the next time you could skip. Like, I was trying to make her feel like she had some control over the pain, and yet still I needed to keep her clean.
Right.
And so that's what every night, every time she came back was, I'd have to sit there and go, okay, let's see. The last time you came back, you didn't have a shower at all. So this time we really need to take a shower or a bath. Oh, and the torture in the bathtub. Oh my gosh. Screaming the whole time she was in there. She would sit down for a second, hop right back up. Too much pain. Crying. Till I had to make the bath water freezing cold. And then she would sit down in it. I joined the Y so that I could take her. I took her twice a week to the YMCA swimming, because that water was cool and it was comforting to her, and she loved it, and she learned to swim. But around that was all this bartering about not taking a shower. So yeah, he didn't do anything again. So I reported to him directly twice. And then the 2 September and October of the next year, where she had to have 2 rape kits done because she came home. She looked like a piece of meat from front to back, screaming, crying, sobbing in my arms until I would call her doctor and he'd say, both of those months, he said, take her straight to that same ER. She needs and tell them you need a rape kit done. So she had that done twice in a row. And it was the same. She came back in the same condition. And I have all those records, and they say everything she told the doctors, nurses, the same nurse, the social worker. I was interviewed each time. It says possible. They all say possible sexual abuse, but nothing done.
Possible.
Yeah, nothing done. CPS would come because I don't know if he was calling. I have no idea. But they would come, like I said, one day, look at my fridge, walk them up to her bedroom. They'd leave, close it the next day. Nothing here. And they'd say things. The only other thing they'd say to me is they would say one comment like, why are you doing this? Doing what? Why are you, why would your child say something about him? Why is this happening? And I'd say, well, I'm telling you the truth. My daughter does not lie. And I'm not saying anything more. I'm not saying anything about him.
Right.
Because no one's helping us thus far.
Right.
And they would shake their heads and leave, and it'd be closed the next day. And one of them, one of the CPS workers was a guy who perjured himself in court, and so did the lady who was in that room where he was interrogating me. Completely lied about that. Said it was a very nice meeting. And this other CPS worker that was here once said to me, point blank said, are you just causing all these investigations because you're trying to frame your ex-husband? No, I did not call. Every time we had a hearing, because we kept having hearings, because after we got divorced, then I filed for sole custody. So then we went through another year of that, and CPS worker got on the stand, and he said, and by that time I had a court-appointed lawyer, and he said, on the stand, he said that he didn't feel there was any need to investigate anything. And the court-appointed lawyer said to him, well, I got your notes, and I was reading in your notes something that you haven't said in court, at least, anything about this. She said, but in your notes, you said that you visited the father's home and that Nina was happy and eating, and she seemed fine. And you asked her where her bedroom was, and she pointed to it. And she said, but you also said that the bed she pointed to was piled mile high all the way to the ceiling with stuffed animals. Is that true? And he said, yes. And she said, you also wrote in your notes that because of that, you made a surprise early morning visit to the father's home the next day and is it true that you found Nina sleeping in her father's bed? Oh, sorry. Is it true that you found the child sleeping in the father's bed? And the other bed was completely untouched. And he put his head down and he shook his head, yes. And she said, and you also wrote in your notes that when you visited the first day, you saw no signs of alcohol. But
whose notes were these again?
One of the CPS workers.
And who's questioning the judge?
My court-appointed lawyer.
Okay.
Is the only thing she did in my defense was caught him in this. And she said, you also wrote that the next early morning, if 4 or 5 a.m., I forget what time you stopped, you not only found her in the bed with her father, but you found the whole top of the refrigerator was full of half-empty bottles of whiskey. And he had to admit to that because she had his notes. So then she said, and you've still found no reason to investigate this at all. He just put his head down and said no. Yeah. And
Wow.
then, yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And then every time we go to a hearing, he would get everything he would ask for, whether it was changing the place of pickup or, they would only be talking about how the judge would be yelling at me saying that I can't he's not going to change custody to me because I have caused my child so much trauma by putting her through at least 9 CPS investigations. And that is horrific trauma to that child. And that is all my fault. Now, I never made a call to CPS. It never. So he's saying 9+ investigations. I don't know what he's talking about. One time during those three trials, I was looking at the back of a phone book and saw this phone number to call for confidential communication, for lack of a better word, confidential talking to someone about abuse. And so I called this number and I was just talking to the lady like I thought it was like a counseling kind of thing. And I told her that how I had been abused and in what ways. And apparently that might be one of the calls, but I never personally called CPS. Each one
Lisa,
had.
will you give me just a moment?
Sure. Sorry.
You have to help my daughter with something. Just a moment.
Okay.
All right. So you left off with telling me that your court-appointed attorney was questioning the social worker.
Mm-hmm. And they lied. And then I forgot to tell you that in June of 2014, Nina was ending her 3rd year of preschool, which of course I paid for every year. When she started preschool, I started her right away at 2.5 when visitation was going to begin. They let me do that because she was turning 3 in December. And I knew she had speech problems and they caught it right away. And this is good to know. They said she needed speech therapy right away. And I signed the papers and he would not sign for her to get speech therapy. So they couldn't start. And it took them 2 years till her middle of her 2nd year of preschool to trick him into signing because he was demanding that the speech therapy be done in his home. And the school district was saying, that's not how we do it. We come to the school, nothing is odd. We play with the child, we do the speech therapy, and that's how it's done. And he was demanding that it be done in his presence, in his home. So they were calling me all the time saying, we don't know what to do to get him to sign. See, he didn't want her to talk correctly. I was the only one who could understand her. So what they did was they called me one day and they said, listen, we've got a plan. The school that she's going to said that they would allow it to happen right after preschool at the school. And we're going to call him and see if he'll agree to that. And he agreed and came in and signed. But then they told me as speech started, he demanded that he be there during speech therapy. And they said, we didn't like it. We told him we didn't want him there. And he insisted and wouldn't let her have speech therapy without him present.
Wow.
Yeah. And then at the end of that year, that was her 2nd year of preschool, the school called me it was like a special end of the year day where they were going to sing for the end of the day. And they said, listen, school's getting out early at 11 and your ex says that he picks her up at 11:30 and he's telling us that he's going to stay in the school. and we do not want him inside the school. Would you please pick her up early and bring her back? Because just so we don't have to have him inside the school. So I had to do that. And then she had 1 year left of preschool, and it's called pre-K. And in June of 2014, just before she got out of that, she told her teacher, who she loved this teacher, Miss Mary, and she loved her teacher, and she was always asking me, who can I tell? Who can I tell? Who can make this stop? You can't make it stop, Mommy, make it stop. Who can I tell? And I would always tell her, never tell a child, tell only someone, an adult that you love and you trust. You can always tell them the truth, but just never a child. And so she, on her own, at the end of the 3rd year, she told her preschool teacher, who made the call, did her, what do you call that, reporting thing? And the state police were called, which was kind of like a little godsend, even though nothing's good happened yet. But she had two separate interviews with this state trooper, and she told him everything that her father does to her. And he was also told by someone to not open investigation, because on the stand, and this was the same day that the CPS workers lied, my court-appointed lawyer called him, and he went up on the stand, and she said, you interviewed Nina? And he said, yes. And, you interviewed the child. And in that interview, did the child tell you anything? And he said, yes, the child told me in detail what her father does to her and during visitation. And she said, the lawyer said, and you didn't feel like that was a reason to open any kind of investigation? And he dropped his head, and it was silence. And then he lifted his head and just shook his head and said no, very quietly. And he looked at me like he kind of tilted his head like, I'm sorry, kind of looked at me. I could tell someone had made him not investigate.
And say this was the social worker?
No, this was a state trooper who then was moved from here. And now he works somewhere up in another county.
It blows me away, all these people who...
Yeah. How do they sleep? I don't get it. Nothing was done. No investigations ever. So that was my custody trial, and he just said, the judge said, nothing's changed. It stays the same. And so then we have, if at the end of those, you have 30 days to appeal. And she flat out told me she wasn't going to appeal because the county said that they couldn't pay her anymore. She had already made $11,000 from the county, and they weren't willing to pay her anymore to be my lawyer. And I said, but I was given a court-appointed lawyer. So she said, well, you'll have to find another one. So I went and requested another one to be able to appeal. And I was turned down. So I went up to the office of the man who assigned attorneys. And he another one who says, what do you want? Very harshly. And I said, well, I need another court-appointed lawyer so I can appeal this. And he started yelling at me, and he said, we are done with you. We are completely done with you. He was yelling at the top of his lungs. I can't do it because I don't yell. But he's screaming at me, scaring me, and saying, well, you've already cost this county. That appointed attorney got $11,000 to represent you. We are done with you. If you want a lawyer, go find your own. Which, that's unconstitutional. I didn't have any income. I deserved a court-appointed lawyer. Just like, it's simple. And he was telling me no, he would not give me another assigned attorney. So she hemmed and hawed about giving me back my box full of information. And when I did pick it up, it was a mess and half full. So I don't know what she took out of it, what the county has. My daughter also, during, it was the first time that she needed the rape kit, when she was rubbed raw when she came back. When I got her,
How old was she?
5. And 5.5 about. And I was holding her, and she was crying inconsolably, and I just held her, and then she sort of stopped crying, and I said, what's wrong, Nina? What's wrong? You can tell mommy anything. You trust me and I trust you, and it's okay. You're safe here. You can say anything you want. And she then went on to tell me, in her words, nonstop, exactly everything that her father does to her. And it's, I got up and I said, here, wait a second. And she was like, no. And she grabbed my neck, and she didn't want me to get up. And I said, no, I have to get my, forget what I said. It was a piece of orange or something I left on the counter. And I said, I'll be right back. I'll put you back in my arms. So I placed her. She was very sore, so this must have been after the hospital. I placed her in the chair and covered her with a blanket. And I came back. And when I came back, she opened her eyes and she had her thumb in her mouth. And I came back actually I have this little Kodak video audio tape recorder. And she didn't see it though. And I sat down Indian style in front of this lazy boy that we always sit in. And she was all comfy up here. And I said, Nina, I'm so sorry. I said, I'm so sorry that you're sad and that you're hurting. And I said, but mommy had a hard time hearing you. So could you and so of course I was taping her in video, but she had no idea. She was just so distraught. And I said, could you just repeat what you just said to me? And she did. She repeated it just like she just said to me. And so that's on a video, which, I gave to the state trooper, because of course he had called me in after she disclosed. So I had been visiting him just as and she was the only person in town that would talk to me. He was a good guy, but for some reason they had him not. They also had their thumb on him, but he didn't tell me that. So I had been going to see him and talking, I thought he was, and he was my friend, but his hands were tied. And so anyways, when I had told him that I had that video of her, he said, would you let me look at it? And I said, sure. This is to the state trooper who I trusted, and I still do to this day. I still think he was being my friend to the best that he could. And so I gave him that, and he said, do you mind if I make copies of it and give it? I want to give one to the other lawyer. I want to give one to the judge. He was trying to help me in his way. And so I told him he could, and he did. And no, that has never been brought up in trial. And it's very telling. I have a copy The state police have a copy. The judge has a copy. Both lawyers have a copy. And she discloses calmly and like it was just another day in the park. This is what happens to me at night. She told me that, and from the time visitation began, she completely changed our last names, and she changed her last name she changed her name to Nina. Oh, sorry. She changed her name to something, and she changed her last name to a Disney character. And she also made that my last name. And whenever she spoke about him, she called him by his shortened first name. Never Dad or Daddy. It was always, say his name was Marcus, she'd always say Mark. Mark told me he's a bad man. And I said, that's what she would tell me. I said, he said that to you? She said, yeah, he says that all the time. He's a bad man and I can't make him mad or he'll be really mad.
Oh.
Yeah. She, so then what? So then where were we? So then the following June, so then I didn't have a lawyer, right? So I went and he told me I couldn't have an assigned attorney. So then I went like crazy trying to find a lawyer so that I could appeal that second for me to get custody and get these charges established and investigated and justice be served and save my daughter all at the same time. And I must have called 50 lawyers, every lawyer in the book, all around here, and no one would take my case. No one would touch it. They said all kinds of different excuses. One would say, I'm going on vacation. I won't be back from Christmas vacation, or won't be back from, I have another trial at the same time. Or another lawyer said, I know who you are. And I said, wait, what does that mean? And she said, well, I know exactly who you are. I know your whole story because I work in the same building as your ex-husband's lawyer, and he told me all the details about your case. That's wrong. They're not supposed to.
That's HIPAA.
Yeah. And then finally one lawyer called me back, and I set up an appointment. I went in there, and it was on my lunch half hour from the first job. That now going back to that sergeant, that's his friend. That'll come into play here. I was working another civil service position. Great job, loved it. Had summers off. It was school calendar. And so anyway, it was on my half hour lunch. I went to see this lawyer. It's probably May of 15. And he said, I'm your man. I'm the one that can get your justice. I can get justice for your daughter, for you. I can see that he's prosecuted for those crimes, and everyone, the judges know that I'm no nonsense and I don't get in on their little cliques. And he was the first person that told me that there's a room, in the courtroom where before you're called in, all the lawyers go into that room to get ready or whatever, just wait till they're called. And he told me that in that room, they all talk about their cases together. And he said that he was different. He was the one that stuck out and that he was the only person that could help me. And then he asked me, do you have any money? And I said, well, the only thing I have is $3,500 that I have saved to pay my taxes. And he said, well, you need to go get that right now so I can get your daughter back right now. And I said, well, I can't. I'll be late back to my job. And he said, if you want your daughter back, you need me right now. You need to go get that money.
Wow.
So what did I do? I went and got the money. I brought it back. He took it. He said he'll be in touch with me. And I
Never heard from him again.
I never heard from him again. So I called him and I said, I talked to his secretary and she said, what do you want? And I said, well, can I talk to him? And she put him on the line and he said, oh, by the way, I can't represent you because I'm actually best friends with that deviant sergeant that's coming after me all this time. And he said, I've represented him on his 2 divorces, and so I can't represent you. I said, okay, well, can I have my retainer back? He said, well, I'll write up what I've done so far, and then I'll call you in and you can pick up what's remaining. He never called. So I walked over there one day on my lunch again, and she said, what are you doing here? Now I heard him and I smelled his cologne. He was in a tiny room next door to her where like their files were. He was hiding from me and having her do the dirty work. And she was saying, oh, well, you don't have any retainer money left. Here's his write-up and he used all your money. I said,
Wow.
I just met him a week ago. What has he done? And she said, well, he said to give you this and there's no money left. And I said, there's got to be money left. There was $3,500. And she said, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the police. So I left because I knew, what I'm up against. And I walked all the way downtown right into our county's district attorney's office. And I asked for help. I started out saying, this lawyer took my money and now he's not going to represent me. And they said, oh, let me guess, it's so-and-so. Oh, he does this all the time. You write to this board and they will get your money back. I wrote my story to the board. They wrote me back a letter and said, he says that he used all the money and we believe him and you're not getting your money back, for lack of better words. So I didn't have time to, dwell on that.
It sounds like you've walked.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have walked through a hallway.
Yeah.
Being passed from one person being beat and then picked up with whatever body you have left.
Yep.
Handed to the next person to finish you off.
Yep.
And every time as you barely have a breath to take in.
Yep.
And dignity to pick up.
How do you get that? You get it. Yeah. And so I went back to the DA's office after I got that letter and I said, you told me, you knew he does this. And I wrote, and they're not giving me my money back. And I said, okay, then I want to talk to the DA because I need, no other police is listening to my reports. No one's taking me serious. I've been ignored. There are crimes, felonies that have been done to me, and I need to report them to someone who will do something. And they would not see me. So I kept calling them and I kept calling other lawyers. And the DA's office finally called me back and I came in for an appointment with an assistant DA. And I sat down with her and told her the crimes that had been done to me and that I wanted, written, formally charged. And she said, well, we can't do that here. We don't do that here. You'd have to have the judge have him arrested. We don't do that. And I said, what? This is the district attorney's office. And I'm telling you that, well, you can go to the police and report it to them. I said, no, they already told me. The police told me to go to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department won't help me because he works there. So I went to the state police. They said this. I said, the state police told me the judge has to okay the arrest. I said, no, so I come here and you're telling me to go to the judge.
Now tell me, where was your daughter during all of this?
Either in visitation with him or, she had to be a visitation. Like I had to work around that.
You still had her at this time, correct?
No. Nope. Right from the beginning, so from 2012 to until I filed for custody. So that was, when was that? 14? Beginning of 13. Until then, he had his liberal visitation, tons of visitation. And then
But you lost her at this point?
I lost her in,
How? Why?
we're right at that point. Because I didn't have a lawyer. They knew that. Because see, they're all in contact. They see me running around town. They know what I'm doing. I'm trying to find a lawyer. They know I don't have one because they're making sure I don't have one.
Why can't you get another court-appointed attorney?
They denied me. Remember the guy yelled at me and said, "We're done with you"? Totally illegal.
But
Totally
you
illegal.
get another one?
He wouldn't. He denied me. They denied me representation. And then made a hearing that I was to appear at. Called a hearing. I had no idea what for. I had no lawyer. Of course, I'm still running around trying to find a lawyer, and it's just before I find the next one, which I'll tell you about after this. But I had to go to this hearing. So my father said, "Do you want me to go with you? I'll go with you." So, oh, and I forgot to tell you, that court-appointed lawyer that I did have, when we started that trial, the very first hearing date, the judge called the lawyers into chambers again. This is what he does. Everything's done in chambers. And when she came out, she came and sat down next to me and she said, "Why does he hate you?"
The
And
judge?
I said, what? And she said, "He said he hates you and that you're never getting custody of that kid." She goes, "Those are his words. Why would he say that?" And I said, "He doesn't know me at all. He doesn't know me. I don't know why he would say that."
Now, is CPS involved at this time, during this time?
Oh yeah, involved and over with. Basically, just open and shut like 9 or 10 consecutive call-ins, like they were nothing. And one of them was she had had an ear infection and a sore throat, and I wanted to take her to an ER.
Your daughter?
Yes, when I had her in my custody, she was screaming. Her ears were hurt. You know an ear infection when you hear one. And so I took her to an ER, but that wasn't in my exact city. It was actually the hospital that I gave birth to her in. So I thought that would be a safe place to go. And I took her there and got right in, and she started doing her jerking with her knees up to her and screaming, "Ow, my tutu, ow, my tutu, ow, my." And the doctor looked at me and he said, "Excuse me, but you're going to have to leave the room." He said, "I want to talk to your daughter alone." I said, "Okay." And I walked out of the room. And about 20 minutes later, he called me back in, and the girl took my daughter for stickers and whatever. He said, "She has an ear infection," and I tested her for strep. He said, "But she also told me that she's being sexually abused by her father in his home, and I'm going to have to call it in. I hope you don't mind, but I have to. It's my, whatever you call that."
Mandated reporter.
Right. So I know that he was one also that called it in. And
what is your response when they say that? Like, "Please do"?
yeah. Yes, I was like, please, no one has listened to us in all these years. No one has listened to me or my daughter. They called her a liar. I mean, so so where was I before that? Oh, with the hearing. So I go to this hearing with my dad, and it's June of 2015. So she's just finished first grade, and during that first grade year, my ex had called CPS on me. That was the only one that they made it known to me that it was actually him that called. And what happened was he called and just said that he believed I was an unfit mother. Didn't say, there's never a reason because there is no reason. So I guess what Nina told me when I picked her up at school that day, she was very upset and crying. And so to try to cheer her up, I would always bring her to this pet store that had puppies in the box. And that cheered her up a little. And then she opened up and she told me that day, she was taken by her teacher out of the classroom, and told that somebody wants to talk to her in the office. So talk about traumatized. I've never traumatized anyone, much less my own children. But she said she was brought into this room and that they were asking her questions, and they wanted to know what daddy says and what mommy says. This is what she told me. And I said, well, what did you talk about? And she said, well, I told them that daddy says that he hates you and that you're mean to me. But I told them you're never mean to me. And she said, and I told them that mommy's always nice to me. And so then what happened was, what I learned later from my court-appointed lawyer, or from one of my lawyers, oh my God, I've had so many, was that he got mad. That's it. He got mad at a hearing once because he felt that the staff at her elementary school was rude to him because they called him in and actually pinpointed him and said, why did you do this? Why did you call this in? What was your reason? And he didn't have one. So he felt, see, when you question him point blank, he gets very, very extremely nervous and then extremely defensive.
Yes.
And then extremely mad and mean. So that's what happened there.
These are narcissists.
Yeah. So what he did to get me back, because it didn't work, his little game didn't work, was the kidnapping. So I'll get to that. But before that, I had to go to this hearing, right? Without a lawyer. So my dad's with me, who's just a quiet man, until you get him enraged. But he's normally just this quiet man. And he's sitting there trying to get me through this hearing he knows what's going on. He's a smart man. He's a teacher, and he just sat there. And the judge said, oh, okay, we're here today. And this is you. And I see you don't have a lawyer, so you'll be representing yourself. Like, didn't ask me, are you representing yourself? Didn't even give me a chance to say no. He just said, and you'll be representing yourself. And then over here is Mr. blah, blah, blah. And he's here with his counsel. And on the matter of yet another CPS report, they just keep throwing that out there like they're all my fault. Like I called them in, and I never called any of them ever, which is the craziest part. And he said, and because of that, I grant temporary sole custody, just like that, within 4 minutes, to Mr. blah, blah, blah. And I fainted. I was standing, of course, because we were all standing. I don't know. And I fainted. I hit my head on the table and passed out.
Can you repeat how the judge said that?
Yep. He said, hello, we're here today with me. You don't have a lawyer, so you'll be representing yourself. And then your ex-husband, Mr. blah, 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 he is here with his attorney. And we're here about yet another trauma that you've put your daughter through, and going through another investigation of Child Protective Services, and this has got to stop, and you don't have any right to do that. And boom, temporary sole custody to the father, just like that. I passed out. I was brought to the emergency room and had a bump on my head, and in shock. He had sole custody, just like that. And then he gave me supervised visitation. I've never done anything wrong. Supervised visitation at a center. And those center people, every time I came, when I had to drop her off for visitations with him, during some of this time, she never would get out of the car. She'd lock herself in the car. I had to pull her out screaming. She wouldn't let go of my neck. They would ask her, why are you crying? What, don't you want to see your dad? And she'd say, no, I don't. And she'd hold on to me. Nothing was done, ever, 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 ever. And then I had to do visitation there at that center, which was 2 hours, I think, once a week, and 1 hour another day. So 3 hours total a week, supervised at this awful place with white hard floors and white walls and nothing she could play with, like just like baby stuff. And it was torture with 2 guards standing 10 feet from you, watching and listening and whatever. You know, just totally uncomfortable for her and me, because she's very attached to me, you know, but she just didn't feel like home at all. Like, it just was, she was so scared and sad and confused, and I was too. And I was trying to find a lawyer now because he did this. He gave him temporary sole custody. So now 2 lawyers call me from Auburn. And I called them both back. They both said they wanted to see me. So I was going to see them both and just see who would want less, whatever. So I went to see one. I picked one out of the 2, and I went to see him. And he again said, "Oh, I'm brand new to this town. I'm the one that's going to get your daughter back. You just give me a retainer and I will get your daughter back. This is unbelievable," and blah. So my dad went with me to that appointment, because at this point I'm just frazzled, you know, just where is help?
And now, really fast, for your supervised visits, who's supposed to be supervising them, and where and how often? And were you given a case plan?
No, there's none of that. That's a new word to me since watching your series. Never heard of a case plan, because I never did anything wrong. See, there's nothing.
Right. Well, right, but they usually will have you do like, but I guess CPS wasn't really involved in your case.
Right, because they closed them all one day at a time.
Okay.
Just to rack them up to say, she's put her through 9 or 10 investigations. That's traumatizing to a child. They never talk to the child. What? Ask her what she's eating? You know what?
Right.
So this guy, my father writes him a check, I don't know, $2,500, and he sends me home and says he'll be in touch with me in the next day or 2. Never calls me. So I start calling him. No answer, no answer, no answer. And then he calls me one day and he says, "Oh, this is within a week." He said, "Come down to my office right away. I've got great news." Oh my gosh, I've got great news. You're going to be so happy. So I run down there, but I brought my friend. She's like the opposite of me. She's really, tough girl, strong girl. She'll talk back to you like that, like, because I'm just a big pushover. So I brought this girlfriend with me, and so we go into his room, and he says, "Oh, I've got the best news." So I'm super excited. I don't know what he's going to say. And he says, "I had a meeting with your husband's lawyer, and we discussed everything, and he is willing to give you 50-50 custody. Isn't that great?" And I said, "No." He said, "What do you mean no?" I said, "I'm not agreeing to 50-50 custody. Why would I agree to have my child 50% of the time with her abuser? What?" And he said, so he started yelling at me. He said, "I only took you because in that room, remember that secret room I told you about at the courthouse? He goes, in that room for years, everyone's been talking about you, the other lawyer, and your name keeps going around the room, and I was just curious to see what you look like." And he said, "They all talk about you. They all know your whole story, and 50-50 is the best they're going to do for you in this. And so you better take it." And I said, "Absolutely not. I'm not going to. My daughter is not lying." And he screamed, and my girlfriend was right there.
How old is your daughter at this time?
5
or 6?
15. So 6.5.
And who is this man that's saying this?
The last lawyer to call me.
Okay.
And he said, "All children lie." He was screaming it. "All children are liars. They're all liars. Every child lies. My children are liars. Your children are liars." her children are liars. And I just kept saying, not my child. My children don't lie to me. My children don't have to lie to me. We don't lie. She's not lying. She's not lying, and I'm not going to stop fighting for her. I'm not going to give up on her. And he just yelled at me out the door. Like, I left. I couldn't take it anymore. He was just yelling at me. And I think it was my friend who said, let's go. We're out of here. We're going to find help somewhere else. And he wouldn't give me the retainer back either. I wrote him a letter that I looked up on the internet how to write to, fire the lawyer and get your retainer back. And he wouldn't give me it back either. So I had no lawyer. And then I was put on, at some point I was put on, he allowed the supervised visitation. He was saying that my ex was going to allow the visitation to be start at my parents' home, but then I could go anywhere I wanted to, but my parents had to be my supervisors and they had to go wherever I went. And that they were going to watch that. They had to stay within, they actually wrote that they had to stay within eye and ear distance of my daughter and I. Now, you do know about my past with my mother, so that's why my ex also knew to choose. He chose them on purpose, knowing that my mother, doesn't like. Yep. So he knew it would turn into what it turned into, and I'll get to that. But so that's how that began, and I was able to get Sundays from something like 9 to 7 or 9 to 5, something like that. I remember it was such torture because they were my supervisors. It was torture. Like, I was trying to go to the places that I used to take my daughter. So like the carousel ride and Build-A-Bear and just different restaurants where she liked to order and just anything that I knew made her happy, gave her joy. And they just made it so hard every single time, just cutting me down in front of her, like as if I was 10 years old again. You can't do that. You can't do that. It made the whole experience. There was no moment of peace between my daughter and I literally cutting me down. Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's not how we raised our children. You shouldn't be so nice to her. You shouldn't let her say she wants to go ride the carousel. Like, you don't have any money. You don't have a pot to piss in, blah, blah, blah. Like, totally, yeah. Trauma. Until she started telling me that they blame, they're both now 80 and 82, and they blame their illnesses. They both have had bouts with cancer in the past couple of years. They said that it's all my fault because of the stress that my situation has always put them in my whole life. So the summer of 18, we were coming back from, I took her to a science center where, pretty neat. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those, where the kids get to experience like static electricity.
Where is it?
It's a science center in Ithaca, New York. I don't know what county that is, but it's a very child-oriented science museum.
Okay.
Which she loved, which they followed me and cut me down the whole entire time. And I tried to hide, cover her from it, but she was nervous the whole time. It's horrible. They would just completely cut me down about everything. Yeah. If I bought her an eraser. Yeah. So at the end of that, we were pulling into the driveway, and the whole ride there and back, I'm sitting in the back seat with my daughter, and I couldn't even have a conversation ever with her because my mother would turn around and she would interject every minute, something, change the subject, change it to her, change it to, it totally just, that was trauma to my daughter. That was trauma to me. Here I was, this is my time.
Now, prior to this, did your parents have a relationship with her or no?
No, just whenever I, went there for holidays and birthdays kind of thing, like nieces and nephews were there too. And
so this is a once a week supervised visit? Okay, Sundays from 9 to
10 hours, I think it was. And she hated it. She hated being around me.
Who did?
And my mother.
Okay, not your daughter.
So she made that abundantly clear to both of us and wouldn't let my father come here because she said he's getting sicker and sicker and it's all because of you. Telling this all in front of my child. So then he came with us to that. He would come to us when I was going to do something special like that science museum. And he came and we came back, and the whole ride back was just her harping on me and how she hated doing this. And she was gonna, she told me that she wanted me to know that she was thinking about telling the judge that she just didn't want to do it anymore. It was too much, taking up too much of her weekend time that she wanted to spend doing things with her husband and their friends during the end of their life. And they were sick of doing things for me, all in front of my child. And my child is looking at me so scared, like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm not going to see? We're not going to be together? Like, she was just, same with me. I didn't know what she meant by that. I didn't know she would. And she did actually do that. And when we got out of the car, she was so mad, saying that she hated the whole time doing this for me. She hated doing things for me. And I'm ungrateful, and I'm horrible to her, and I say horrible things to her. And she's talking about me saying, please don't say that. And, kind of like whenever she'd say something mean about me in front of my child, I would just say, please, I'd whisper, can you please not do that? But she was just horrible. And this was one of those instances where she got my father extremely mad. And so she was talking at me, and she was yelling, and it's a quiet neighborhood where they live in a very nice neighborhood. So I was very insecure when she was yelling at me how I've ruined their lives, and I've done this my whole entire life. As a child, she couldn't stand me, and blah, blah, blah. It just went on and on and on. Outside the car, in the driveway of their house, with neighbors out. It was a hot summer day, and I was embarrassed, and I was sad, and my daughter was clinging to my body over here and trying to hide her ears, and she just was like on the verge of tears. And I was just saying, like, please don't do that. Like, you can't, please don't do that. You can't, if I do that, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't have anyone. There's no one else. Like, I've lived my entire life around my children. I don't have a big bunch of friends to ask someone to spend 10 hours not getting paid watching me, I just said, please, I don't know how much longer, but can you not do that yet? Can you just wait at least till maybe I can find someone else or something? And my father got irate and lunged at me, and Nina was on the other side and actually behind me now, holding on to me, and he punched me. He punched me as hard as he could in my stomach, and called me the most horrible swear. He was swearing, and just the punch was unbelievable. Like, he's a strong man. He played college football. He was a college coach. He's a strong man. It hurt. And I've got problems. I have 2 hernias. I have tons of ulcers. I have IBS. I have lupus and fibro and blah, blah, blah. And, so it scared me.
Sound like me.
Yeah. And I just had a heart attack in October.
Do you know about my health issues?
I just heard it in the radio one where you just mentioned very briefly. And I was just like,
have lupus.
Yep.
And I have gastroparesis.
That's what I'm scared of. Yep.
And then I have fibro, and I have POTS and dysautonomia, so I have heart issues.
Yep. That's same as me, except I don't have that yet. Which I'm so. And he not only did that, but right after he did that, he stomped on my feet as hard as he could, like 10 times, while my daughter just stood there like in tears.
How do you punch your stomach? Like
full on. Boom. Right where my hiatal hernia is. Maybe just below it, but I'm scared. I'm still scared. Like, I'm having really bad problems right now that they can't figure out what's wrong, but my stomach's very distended and they're doing all these tests. But yeah, and that's when that's how they ended. They just quit. So I went onto Facebook and I put it out there. I said, is there anyone who, I can't pay you now, but someday I would pay you. I need a 10-hour spot where you would just you just have to come to my home and just go where I go with my child. You don't have to do any work. Please, anyone. And one girl answered and said, oh, anyone who knows me knows that I would do just acquaintance from high school. I would do anything for a friend. I will do this. Well, she lasted 2 or 3 months, and she was just like my mom. She cut me down everything. The way I talk with my kids is very sweet and very loving and very kind, and they speak to me the same way. And so she would sit up here in this chair and cut me down. Oh, you're going to raise a brat right there. I raised my son on tough love and blah, blah, blah. And then so I decided to start bringing Nina to my oldest son. He's married with 2 children. I have 2 granddaughters. So I started to go to his church so that my daughter could be around her. Her nieces were only not much longer than her. And it was great, except this supervisor girl, she met a man there, a single dad. And she said to me, I'm going to be inviting him to come to your home for those 10 hours because I want to get to know him. And he has a daughter and she can play with Nina. Like, no, this is my visitation. I'm not comfortable with a stranger.
Try not to say her name.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I said, no, this is so that I can be with my child. I don't want to watch my child play with a stranger and then you're with your stranger and I can't. So she just quit without telling me. She just left a message on my lawyer's phone.
Why couldn't your son or other son monitor it?
Because my other son, he's a manager, he works all the time. And this son that lives here is an assistant manager. And the weekends are the busy time for his business. So we couldn't do that. So then that left me without a supervisor. So I didn't see her for a long time. But the kidnapping was the legal kidnapping, that's what I call it, was, remember that June where he gave him temporary sole custody and I didn't have a lawyer. So I didn't have a lawyer all that time. And so I had her, it was Christmas night, 2/15, and I had to bring her back at 7, and it was pitch dark out. And the pickup place and drop-off place was the city police station. And without warning, no warning to the child or to me, which I find just disgusting. I got out of the car. My father drove me down there. It's Christmas night. Got out of the car with her, holding her hand. I couldn't see him. He comes out of the darkness. There was no lights on in the parking lot. It was completely dark. He comes out of the darkness with the the other sheriff that I used to exchange at his house. And they both had their arms crossed and no facial expressions. And next thing I know, someone comes out from the parked police cars, all dressed in black. And it happens to be that sheriff's daughter who graduated with my son, so I know her. And so I said, I didn't know what she was doing. So I said, oh, hi, so-and-so. Like, I'm just trying to be, like, I'm really nervous, but I'm trying to be me. And she didn't answer me. And there was silence. And I said, oh, your hair looks pretty. You know, I give compliments to people when I'm whatever. And she ignored me. And she said, she threw papers at my feet at the very same time that my ex grabbed my daughter from my hands. And I didn't know what was going on. And the door was open that I got out of. And my father said, well, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. And so these papers were all over the parking lot. And I picked them up. There were like 4 papers. And I got in the car and he said, what's that? And I said, I don't know. And I'm reading it. And it was the judge's signature on the last page, just his signature and the date, giving him sole custody. No reason, no fair hearing, again, for the second time. Did nothing wrong, no reason to remove her, so illegal. And he walked away with her without warning or reason or anything. And so that was Christmas 2015.
There wasn't a court hearing or anything that this just came.
No, nothing regarding those papers, just sole custody given to the father.
How did that happen without your involvement, though?
I know. And I think that was the beginning of the supervised with my parents, and then that girl. And then she quit in the beginning of November of 2 years ago, of 18. And so then I didn't see her again until I found the lawyer I have now, who filed for the third custody that we're in right now. And I asked him, why do I have to go through this again? They're going to do the same thing to me. And it is torture. It's such torture. And he said, because the other 2 lawyers you had purposely did not appeal when you lost custody. They illegally just didn't represent you. I forget the word he used, something like ill represented you or whatever that word is. I can't even think of it. And he said, because they did that, they let the time go by and you lost the opportunity to appeal.
How old is your daughter now?
11 and a half.
When was the last time you saw her?
So now this lawyer, we've been through 2 hearings with him, and in the 2 or 3, yeah, in the first 2, he just flat out told the judge, you have no legal reason to have ever had her custody taken, for one, ever, no fair hearing, no reason, no legal backing behind it, and no reason that she should be supervised. He said, Judge, I've been in front of you with crack addicts, and as soon as they get clean, they get their children back. What are you doing in this situation? And the judge just crosses his arms, smirks, and says, and my answer is still no. And he's tried to get him to recuse himself, and he shakes his head and laughs and says, and my answer is still no. Just to try to get me to run out of, like you said, run out of pieces to my soul. And so this last time we were just there like last month, and because we called, my lawyer made a motion to show just cause why they should return custody to me and prosecute the crimes. And the judge said no to everything. And then my lawyer said, you cannot sit up there and say she can't have custody of her child, and you don't even give her any unsupervised visitation. You haven't given her any unsupervised visitation ever, and she's never done anything wrong. And so the judge said, okay, she can have, now before I had 10 to 7, I think it was, or 9 to, I don't know. And he said, okay, she can have Saturdays for 2 hours, but that's all I'm giving her. So I had that for a while. And then just this time he said I could have, I forgot to tell you this. All the law guardians up to this one, but this one's bad too, would stand up and say, their only sentence would be, the judge would say, do you have anything to add to this court before we start? And they said, I don't want any near her mother. These are people that would not see me when I called to make an appointment. And they just said that flat out to the judge. I have good reason to not want this child anywhere near her mother. And he would go, okay. And
who are these people, though?
Just regular lawyers in town that they're on a list, and they become a law guardian if they're picked, and the judge tells them what they're to say.
Where's the guardian ad litem?
That's what I'm thinking they're called.
Oh, so they're the attorney for the child?
For the child, yeah. But here they just say law guardian. The first guy, in the beginning in 2012, when the judge ordered psychological evaluations on both me and my ex-husband, which we did, and because of the outcome of them, they were never brought up in court. Totally said it even said he shouldn't have, if he's ever in the custody of a child, he should be supervised, that he has all 10. Yeah, I have it. I have it. And it says that, and they would never let him, like he played a game, the judge in court, and he said, well, when my lawyer at that time, whoever it was, said, we want the psychologist to testify. And the judge said to the law guardian, he said, would you please rearrange that for the next hearing? The next hearing would come and the law guardian would stand up and go, oh, I forgot to call him. Because this thing said, oh, he had all these personality disorders. He's delusional. He's got anger management problems. He obviously lied. He could tell he was lying. He could tell I was telling the truth. When we did the written test, he said that my ex deliberately, after he gave him instructions at the door, he deliberately then went and took 3 or 4 minutes for each question. When he came to the door, and he would tell us, when you answer, just read it and answer, read it and answer, read it and answer.
Read what and answer? Like
the questions, they were like multiple choice questions in this psychological testing, besides being interviewed by this man.
Right.
He's highly regarded. So now this lawyer, who's from another county, finally is bringing this forward in this third case, because at the next hearing, he's bringing that, he's paying for that expert witness of that psychologist that tested us both. And I had my daughter in counseling, because remember in the beginning in February of 12, when we met at the Child Advocacy Center, the woman who ran it said to me that I needed to have both. I needed to be in counseling and my daughter needed to be in counseling, and she was ordering me to do that. So I got her in counseling, and I was just getting free counseling with the Save Our people there.
How old was your daughter at that time?
3.
Okay.
And we went to court, and the judge he found out about it. The judge yelled at me in court, and he stood up and he pointed at me and yelled at me, and he said, "What right do you have to put this child into counseling? You have no right to do that without the father's okay, and he disagrees, so you are no one's to go to counseling." He slammed his gavel down and he said, "That's it. No counseling for anyone. I don't believe in counseling, and you are not allowed to have her. You are to take her out of counseling immediately." And so I had to, yep. And she was seeing a sweet lady who had 30 years experience with Capricia, the holding with children.
Did she tell the counselor or therapist or whatever?
Not yet, no. She had just seen her 3 times.
She didn't tell her what was going on.
No, they were just getting to like know each other, and she was this sweet older lady. Yep. And nothing's written down. It's as if none of this has happened, except Nina and I know. Oh, sorry, except we know.
Now, do you have any proof, whether it be witness or medical records or anything, about the sexual abuse that was happening to your daughter?
Yeah, I have the hospital records.
What does it say in there?
That she disclosed to doctors and nurses that she's being sexually abused by her father.
Okay. Was there proof, though?
Yes, they said there was redness was found and swelling on one side. Oh, and in the first rape kit, they found 2 male DNA samples, 2 separate male DNA. Now, this is, I have to go back and tell you that not only did he tell me he was going to sexualize my baby from birth till adulthood, he said that at some point when he felt she was ready, he was going to introduce other men to her until she was old enough to pick her own man and be the perfect sexual partner for a man. So in one of these rape, the first one, they found these 2 male DNA samples. In the second one, a month later, I can't even believe this, they found a white pubic hair in her anal cavity. And it's right there in the record, and nothing was done. I mean, they probably made their phone call, and that was probably one of the CPS calls. But again, once it gets here, CPS, they're all in on it. They're all in on what the judge is telling everyone what to do. This case is mine. She's not getting that kid. Gets done this way. Open and shut in a day. All CPS reports. Oh, and when I had her in visitations, when I was being supervised, and my parents were here, often, there'd be different moments where I'd like, maybe I was out in our kiddie pool with her or on a trampoline, or if we were at the Y, we were swimming, they were sitting on the benches, whatever. My daughter did sexual things to me. I'd go to kiss her and she'd thrust her tongue all around in my mouth. One time I was throwing the fish at the bottom of the pool and she went down to get them. And when she came back up, she didn't come out of the water, and she grabbed my behind with her hands and she put her face right into my private parts and knew what she was doing. She knew what she was doing.
Underwater?
Yeah, like a pro.
No.
Oh, yeah. And I had to pick her up out of the water and say, "What are you doing? You cannot do that. That's a bad touch. You can't do that." And she laughs and says, "But Dad says it's funny." And then she'd run away because she was half embarrassed, half, am I in trouble? half, oh my God, why did I do that? I could see it on her face. Another time we were playing upstairs. She loves to, she sings very well. We both sing. And,
Hold on, let's go back to the pool one.
okay.
Her whole head was underwater?
Yep.
So she's 3 years old, you said?
No, she was older then when my parents had supervised visitation. So I don't know, maybe 6, 7, maybe 8.
And your parents were there watching this?
Yeah, but they weren't really watching. They're sitting over they don't want to be there. It was awful.
So her face is in your...
Yes.
What? Sorry.
My vagina.
Okay.
And
underwater.
Way in, like with her, underwater. Yep. And she did it here on my bed. I was sitting watching her sing and dance at the end of my bed. I have this it's a low dresser that she can stand on.
But in the pool, didn't you have a suit on?
Yes. But she was simulating it, or whatever you call it. She was...
Through the suit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she did it with her hand, hard, up on the bed. She told me I was sitting and she said, lay down. And I said, okay. And I laid down and she jumped on me and she slid her hand right into my body part, split right. She knew exactly where she was going, and moved it around. And, again, I had to say, what are you doing? You can't do that. That's a bad touch. And she again would say, well, Dad thinks it's funny. Isn't it funny? Doesn't it tickle? No, Nina, cannot do that. And she did it to me out in our kiddie pool too. She came down the slide once and she jumped on top of me. And another time and that time in the pool was she put her hand in there and tried to wiggle it around and was trying to kiss me with her tongue. And that was another time I had to talk to her about that. And again, she said, well, Dad thinks it's funny. And then one time upstairs, she climbed up on the bed. She put her body part, her private part. She jumped on my face with it.
Oh my gosh.
And she held on to, I have a sleigh bed thing. She held on to that and she was grinding on my face. I could not breathe. And she should not have known how to do what she was doing. And she was grinding me so hard and laughing. And I got her off of me again. I said the same things. And she said the same thing. Well, Dad thinks it's funny.
Did she have underwear on or no?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Fully clothed and everything. But out of nowhere, she would just do these things. Feel my breasts. That's what it started with. It dance. She was a pretty professional dancer. She danced for 6 years, tap, ballet, and jazz that I put her through. She loved it. He took her out of that. I took him to court to try to just get a court order to let her be in the recital. 2 weeks before the recital, he took her out. She had her costumes. She was dancing around the house showing me her routines. So I took him to court to get a stay so she could go to that recital. And the judge said, really, well, I think that's up to Mr. Do you want her to dance? No. Boom. So-and-so doesn't dance. Just like that, within 5 minutes.
The teacher said?
No, the judge.
Oh.
And he stalks me. He follows me around. I've caught him behind me many times in a car that I did not report. And then the last year she was dancing, they wanted to do something that they never did before. And they asked the mothers if they would do a short mother hip hoppy thing for the kids as a surprise at the end. So I was in that dance class. It was a private dance class, 3 floors up. And I caught him in the corner of the room during the private dance lesson. And it was at night, so he followed me there, and he probably assumed that the owner wouldn't be there. But she happened to walk in and find him. And she immediately asked him to leave, and he left. I went and I reported it to the police because it was in the city. So I went to the city police department, and I said, listen, my ex-husband I have a restraining order. He was caught in my private dance lesson in the room by the owner. So I want him charged with stalking, if nothing else, something. And he said to me, who's your husband? I said his name. And he said, oh, you hang on a minute. I'm going to give him a call. And as he walked out, I said, but he's going to lie to you. He's not going to tell you the truth. And he said, you just wait here. I'll be right back. I'm going to give him a call. He came back and said, Mr. He says that he wasn't there to see you. He was there to check out the archery lessons and to see if you might want to sign his daughter up for them. And I said, the archery lessons are in the basement of the building. He was upstairs in my private dance room in the corner hiding. And you're not going to do anything about it. He said, no. He says he wasn't there to see you. Just like that.
Wow.
And you don't even know yet how they arrested me. 2 years ago, you're not going to believe this. It's bizarre. 2 years ago, when I found this new lawyer from out of county, I was in probably my second appointment with him. And he said, can you just tell me, he said, since this order was in place, this last sole custody order, he said, has your daughter said or done anything that would cause you to believe that she's still being sexually molested? And I said, yes. And then I explained to him those things that I just told you that she had been doing. And he said, did you report it? And I said, no. I said, but I have this notebook. And I pulled out, I had it in this pretty little notebook. I wrote dates, times. I mean, she did this numerous times. Everything she said, everything she did, the date, the time, who was with me. And he took a look at it and he said, oh my God. He said, you have to report this. And I said, no, I'm not going to report it because look. And I showed him, I said, there's an order in that order that says, brace yourself. It says that if the mother reports anything, she will lose all visitation with the child. So I said, I'm not going to call. And he said, it is your obligation, legal obligation to call this in. He said, I'm going to make you a copy of this notebook. You keep the notebook and you're going to go home and you're going to call this number. He wrote it down. He highlighted it. And he said, you have to report this. Otherwise, you're breaking the law. You don't report it. I didn't want to do it. He said, when you do it, just call me up and tell me when you've done it. I said, okay. I went home. I did what he told me. And the next day, that friend of his, that's a sergeant, was at my door yelling that they were going to break it down. They had a warrant for my arrest. I had no idea what was going on. I called my lawyer. It was a Sunday. So they planned it so that maybe my lawyer wouldn't be able to come. My lawyer said, hang on a minute, let me call him on the porch and then I'll call you back. I was so scared in here. And they were saying that they were going to knock down my door in 3 minutes and they had a warrant for my arrest. So he called me back, the lawyer, and he said, oh yeah, he somehow went to your town hall, got a warrant for your arrest from the lay. We have a judge here, but it's not a lawyer or anything, and got a warrant for my arrest because based on that illegal order, which there's many in that order. And so he said, but I know where they're taking you, and I will be there when you get there. So I look outside and I say, okay, I'm going to come out, but I need to put clothes on. So just give me a couple minutes. And he said, okay. So I left my phone here and I took like an empty purse and I went. They had at least 6 SUV, state trooper, sheriff department, and Auburn Police Department outside my home, which I live in a very quiet residential area. Unbelievable. Surrounding my home, I have a fenced-in backyard. They had a state trooper standing at the door at the back of my fenced-in yard in case I decided to go out that door. I don't know. But what they didn't know was there's a door in between there and the front door. It goes out the driveway, kind of. And so I went out that door and I totally surprised him over here by the porch. And I said, okay, I'm here. What is this about? And he ordered the other guy with him. Now he being that guy who from the start was the guy at the Child Advocacy Center, all that. He took my job, civil service job as health clerk from me by putting in a false resignation through school board, which he got himself on the school board that year to do. So I'm losing, I have almost 14 years in with the state. And because he took that job, I started taking other civil service exams. I got another job at a state hospital. When they found out about that, he made one phone call and that job was terminated. So anyways, they arrest me. They put me in handcuffs very roughly, very tight, for making a legal phone call. You're remembering this, right? And just that morning, I had my son install a Ring audio video camera on the porch. So I have it all on tape. And they didn't know that because as the guy was walking away with me, he had me by the arm and I was in handcuffs in this quiet little sweet neighborhood. All the neighbors are out. No one does anything wrong here. This is like this tiny little town. And he called the guy's name out and the guy turned around with my arm in his hand and he said, "What?" And that man, who's my ex's friend, was still on the porch, who executed the warrant, who falsely arrested me for, the arrest was called falsely reporting child sexual abuse. When I just made the call the day before. It hadn't been a hearing or anything. So anyways, he says to the guy, and it's clear as day, and I sent it to my lawyer, he has it too. He said, "Fuck her."
What do you mean?
Like fuck with her. Like be as bad as you want to be.
My gosh.
Yep. And I was thrown in the car in front of my
child.
I was born and raised in this home that I bought 13 years ago by selling my own home. Yeah, they've totally
did just that.
Destroyed me. I was taken and booked. Pictures, fingerprints. My lawyer showed up in shorts and t-shirt. And thank God he did, because if he didn't, I'm sure I would have been thrown in a cell. I'm sure. And interrogated by that other man again. But because my new lawyer was there, and also, by the way, as I'm standing there after I just had been through the worst experience of my life, being fingerprinted and booked, and all these people around, like all these people trying to walk by and peek at me and see how I was suffering. Even the new sheriff himself, I caught him peeking from under the window, everything. Like, it was so bizarre. And this girl walks in and walks right up to me. Doesn't know my lawyer's standing off to the side. And she says, "Hello, you need to talk to me right now. I've come to talk to you about this incident." And I said, who are you? And she says, "Well, I'm so-and-so from CPS. And my lawyer stepped forward and he said, Excuse me? He said, why would you be here? He said, you wouldn't be here. This is not where you work out of. This is not normal protocol. Why are you here? And she kind of stuttered with her words. And he said, here's my card. He said, I'm her lawyer. And if you want to talk to her, you can get in touch with me. Well, guess what? She never got in touch with him. And she never spoke to me because they knew it was a false arrest. So that was May of 18. Now, they would never, I kept calling my lawyer saying, because, and he immediately.
This is all straight up harassment.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone else here tells me, just be quiet. Wait till she's 18 and can drive. Like, what? No.
Don't listen to that.
So I was like, they wouldn't give me any hearing dates because they knew it was a false arrest, right? And they didn't figure out what I figured out. They didn't figure out that I would figure out that I all of a sudden said, you know what? I'm going to sue them for false arrest. They won't give us a hearing date. We asked for a trial because we want to prove that I didn't do anything illegal. And my lawyer kept saying, well, I keep asking for a date and they keep putting me off. So I looked it up on the computer and I found out that you have a 2-year window to sue for false arrest. After that, you have no rights. Now, when they falsely arrested me, that deviant one, that's the friend of my ex, he put it on the internet, the arrest, what I was arrested for. It appears when you look at it, when you put my name in there, that it's an open arrest. That's illegal. He shouldn't have done that. I mean, he can do that. You could do that, but it was already in the, it's just not something they just normally do, but it is right there. So no one will hire me. Pops right up. So I figured out that, and I got it in on time. I had to do it because my lawyer was just like, oh, I don't want to go through suing them. But I was like, this is my integrity. Like, I'm going to sue them for false arrest. And so I put in the, what do you call it, to be able to sue them. And the minute they heard that, my lawyer called me in. They called him up, the DA, who has since sent me a letter saying that my ex wants a restraining order against me. No reason why, but that he's considering it. But anyways, they called up my lawyer, and my lawyer called me in, and they said that they will drop the charges because now they're being threatened with being sued for breaking the law against me on purpose. But anyways, they said that they're going to drop the charges. This was July of this year. And if you're a good girl for 6 months, meaning you don't report anything for 6 months, again.
Hold on. Yeah. Said if you're a good girl.
That's what I said. What does that mean? He said, well, you can't make any more phone calls.
Who says this?
My lawyer. He's the one who told me to make the phone. He knows that it was a legal phone call. Like that, these are things that my daughter has said and done, and I was obligated to report them. And I did what I was told. But he said they're saying in 6 months they will, whatever you call it, dismiss it, disintegrate or whatever they do with it, drop it. But it's dropped. He said it's gone. But there's this 6 month, like I have to make it to January 16th without them finding another reason to arrest me. And just today, I was served with papers again for non-payment of child support. He summoned me over a year ago for child support. He makes like $88,000 a year. I've been out of work since an injury in November of 18. So I've been out of work 2 years. And because of COVID, it has halted. So I'm still not getting workers' comp payments. I'm still not getting unemployment. I've applied for, all the things that I could apply for because of this injury. I need my knee replaced because of that injury. And no one will hire me because of what they put on the internet about that false arrest. That makes it look like it's an open arrest. And there's no way to get that off. They know that. That's why he did it. So yeah, so I think that's everything.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So I sit here and, I just sit here and pray for a miracle. And then I don't know, somehow I saw this and was like dreaming of being able to tell someone that wasn't just my kid who feels bad for me, but doesn't know what to do. No one seems to know what to do. I mean, I've asked, and along the years, I've asked people that I knew that had, like, I knew one guy who was a investigator for the state. And when I told him my story, oh, I have all these resources. I know how to get in and I can help you with it. Never heard from him again. Where I raised my sons, I had a home and I lived across the street from a state trooper who's now become an investigator. So I called him one day. Well, I didn't call him. I reached out to him on that professional platform in LinkedIn. And he called me and he said, oh, well, you called the right person. He watched me raise my sons. So I figured he would know. He knows me. Like, he would know. And he did. He was like, oh, I totally get everything you're saying. I know exactly what's going on and I know the right people. And I'll be helping you. I know what to do. Just give me a week or two. Never heard from him again. So see, everyone's being squashed that said they could help me somehow never get back to me, including the FBI, I even called the state attorney general. First I called the DA in the next county, which is a big county. And the guy told me, the head DA said, I don't know how you got my number, but you got lucky. He said, I happen to be best friends with the state attorney general who handles public corruption. And he said, I'm going to give you her name and her number and tell her I told you to see you. I went and I had an appointment with her. She told me, oh, I know exactly what you need. You need to not be in family court. You need a special kind of criminal lawyer. And she said, I'm going to help you get that lawyer. I'm going to find it and I'm going to help you. We're going to help you. State attorney general. Haven't heard back from her. Who else is there? The president? Like, yeah. I can't save my daughter for nothing. My parents, my brother's daughter just got married and they hid everything from me. But of course I see the pictures on Facebook. She just got married. I wasn't invited to any of it. I went to the funeral of my aunt who I loved. I was close to this aunt. And as I walked through, all of my family and my nieces and nephews and my godmother were all standing somewhere. And the minute they saw me, my mother and my godmother, they're very close, told all of the kids, you could actually see it happening, to turn their backs to me and not look at me and not speak to me. So I went to the back of the room and sat in a chair and was so sad to see them manipulate my nieces and nephews that I was so close to. Like, I love, I'm so good with children, and to have them turn them on me like that. They just act like I don't exist because they don't want to know. Oh, and one little tidbit, my father told me, when I told you that assigned attorney came out of chambers and said, why does he hate you? He said, you're never getting custody of that kid. Afterwards, I told my dad what she said, and he said, I have to tell you something. My father was a business math teacher forever. And he said, I have to tell you that this judge was a former student of mine. And he got picked on a lot. He's a very tiny guy. very tiny. So he was very tiny in high school, he said, and he got picked on a lot. He's very, very smart. And I'll to tell you something about how my father taught. My father was very sarcastic in his joking. So he had his own way of picking on just about everybody. And he said some kids loved it and could do it back and relate. And then there was those who hated me for it. And he said, I remember how much the judge hated me because he added to someone he already knew was being picked on. He picked on him even more. So of course, what is that guy going to go and become? A judge, where he might be able to do something like this someday. Yeah. He said, I think he might be taking out his hatred for me on you. Part of the reason, but there's a lot of money involved on my ex's part. My ex's father has endless money. Yeah. And my daughter has said all along, why no one will believe me. She says, only you and baby Jesus believe me. She says, I tell everyone that I want to go home with my mommy and be with my mommy in my house. And no one listens to me and no one says anything. Why, mommy? Why? She said she's told everyone. But she said now, this past year, she said to me, especially this trial that we're in now, of course, she had to have a new law guardian. So now it's this new girl. Oh, because the one before this girl, the ad litem before this girl, was a guy, and he was the only one who agreed to see me. And so I did have a little meeting with him. And I don't know, he was kind of intimidating to me, so I didn't think anything great about it, but I was just happy that he saw me. And he got up in court first time, and the judge always starts with them. Do you have anything to say before we start this hearing? And he stood up and he said, well, I want you to know that I've spoken to the child many times, and I believe that she's holding back on me. She's holding something back, and I need to find out what that is. He was gone.
Who said that?
The guardian ad litem. And the judge got rid of him, and in comes this girl now that we have, who stood up last month and said, I don't think we should change anything with the custody. Like, it was, everything they say is so, it's so obvious that that's what the judge told them to say. And she said, I don't think anything should be changed. In fact, I make it a point to secretly see the child after every time she's with her mother. And she says the mother says things that refer to her maybe being back in the home. Like, she said the stupidest things. Like, there was a box and she would be able to open it when she comes home, or something stupid. Like, it's just stupid. Like, yeah.
When is your next court hearing?
Well, January 20th, but now today I just got served with, I started to tell you, with failure to pay. I got summons to appear before the child support judge. And when they put me on child support, I was injured without income. I'm still injured with no income. I'm living on food stamps. The guy makes $88,000 a year. And, my health is not good.
Do you get to see her right now?
Saturdays from 10, it was 10 to 12, and my lawyer yelled and said, 2 hours isn't long enough to do anything. And so at the very end, and his lawyer stood up and started yelling, calling me all sorts of names, saying, what if she's delusional? What if, oh my God, he was just crazy. And even the judge had to tell him to calm down and be quiet. And the judge said, all right, 10 to 3:30, But it's up to he said 10 to 3:30, but let's leave it up to the child if she wants to stay that long. And my lawyer was yelling, what? Just make it 10 to 3:30. What are you saying? You're pitting an 11-year-old who's living with the one parent against the parent she's not living with? What are you doing? And it just ended. And so, but when she comes here, she wants to stay the whole time. She doesn't even want to leave, but he makes her text him. And at 12 o'clock, he pulls up and she's got to go out to the car, get in the car, have a 10-minute conference with him, and then she's allowed to stay. Yeah, we have to stop what we're doing.
Are these unsupervised visits?
Yeah, for the first time in forever, since 15.
Does she talk about anything that's going on?
She won't talk about it now. She says to me, she did tell me the first time she came, she said, I have to tell them that I want to live at Dad's house because I like the toys better. Oh, Nina, I just said, you don't have to say anything someone tells you to say. You can just tell the truth. And she says, no, Dad will get mad at me and I can't have Dad mad at me.
Well, and you have to understand that.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this poor baby has not been protected by anybody.
Ever.
And no matter how hard you've tried to tell or whatever, nobody has stepped up for her.
Yep. And he broke court orders all along. Like when I used to have holidays, he just wouldn't bring her to Halloween, or he would pick her up early, or he'd cancel. When I had supervised at that place, he'd cancel all the time last minute, and he could do that because he had temporary sole custody. He was just doing all kinds of things too. I took him to court in July of 16 because my oldest son was getting married. So I knew I had to have a special permission because my daughter and I were in the wedding. We were the first ones to walk down the aisle. And so the judge allowed me to have her 4 hours on the night of the rehearsal and 4 hours to be in the wedding. Court order, had it in my hand, go to pick her up for a rehearsal. She comes out, super excited. Get there. It's the most beautiful time with both of her brothers. She realizes we're the first one to walk down the aisle. She's beyond happy. She's the star of this wedding. I mean, it was just so important to her. Drop her off, go there the next day for the wedding. He's laughing at his sliding glass door. She's not coming. I don't want her to go. She's crying inside his dwelling, screaming, Mommy, I want to go. Let me go. I want to go with Mommy. He's laughing, just like he laughed at me all the time, everything he did to me. So I know the torture she's under. I know it. I heard it. I saw it. He wouldn't let her go, so I called the state troopers, and I was thinking, at least I have the order in my hand, they'll knock on the door and just get her for the wedding. I just couldn't imagine what happened. And then he came and he said, there's nothing I could do. The judge, you have to take this up, and you're in family court. You have to go to family court about this.
No.
I had the order in my hand.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do anything. So I missed my son's wedding because I sat there. I was sat there in shock. I was just in shock that my daughter was going to miss this moment in her life, that she was so excited. Then because she was crying my name. I couldn't leave the driveway. I sat in the state trooper's car with him while he told me, I'm sorry, they won't let me do anything. They won't let me help. He made his phone call, and whoever told him, no, it's the judge's call. Take it up with him.
Did you try calling your attorney that day?
I don't think I had an attorney at that time. don't think I had an attorney at that time. I think I went alone that day to get the order and was granted it. Yep. And I know I was alone for the dance recital too, which would have been her 6th dance recital. The next year she was going to do solos. And he just took it from her. Just ripped it out from under her. Yeah. She has no friends. She tells me she forever, this whole time, all these years, he has her take a shower once a week, wear the same underwear all week, and then he takes the underwear. And
Really?
she tells me little things, like she said she was crying for me for a long time, but he would come in and berate her for it. So now she says, now I cry quietly so he can't hear me, so he won't come back to my room. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you knew. Do you know about the radio show we do on Saturday nights?
I just watched it this past Saturday for the first time.
Would you mind calling in as a guest?
Yeah. What's the number again? Oh. 888.
No, 1-800.
Oh, okay.
222.
Okay.
5222.
Okay. And I noticed that he likes specific questions. So what do I ask? I mean, look, I'm in a tornado, so I don't know which question to pull out. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I just sit here and it's just like a tornado around me. Like, I don't know what to do.
I would say listen back to the recording of this.
Okay.
Create I'm messaging my assistant.
Okay.
Before we finish this part of the conversation, because I'm going to stop recording, is there anything that you would tell parents that are listening right now?
I can't think of anything because I can't help my daughter. I can't help myself. I've tried everything.
But you haven't stopped.
Right. I will not stop. She knows.
Looking back, so parents don't get in this situation.
I don't know. Wait a long time before you get married. Really get to know someone. I did not do that. And I beat myself up over that.
Me either. 3 months.
Yep. Basically, yeah. Yep. It's like
we're fooled, we're tricked, we're
we're
played, we are preyed upon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He just said, "Oh, you're an angel." That's what he said all the time. You're such an angel and you're so perfect. And he would just stare at me fiercely and just like say all these nice things about me and worshipped me, pretended to worship me. And I never had that. And I had just spent 13 years alone raising my sons, paying a mortgage, taxes, everything without help.
I wish there was so much more I could do. Let me shut the recording off.